Now? Okay, thank you for joining us today on Kerberos Roundtable Discussions. We were supposed to have a guest host today. I have no idea what happened with that, so I'm going to go on, and if he joins the Zoom call while we're live, we'll let him in. But anyway, today we're going to be discussing the Democratic primary and the rise and fall of the different candidates. We're going to start with Senator Elizabeth Warren. So before we start talking about her during the primaries, I want to show an old video of her on MSN. I want to show an old report by the Young Turks of her on MSNBC, where she is fighting aggressively for the reinstatement of Glass-Steagall, which she was working on getting reinstated with Senator John McCain. So we're going to show that video graphic first.
Warren is now the senator from Massachusetts. That's fantastic. Now, she was the person who pushed for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They thought that that was unrealistic and that would never happen, except, in fact, it did happen. She was very effective.
We cannot hear the volume.
The Republicans blocked.
Okay, share the, you have to share your volume.
Blocked her nomination to become the head of the bureau that she created.
Start the video over.
Well, she said, okay, great. I'll go and join you in the Senate. Elizabeth Warren is now the senator from Massachusetts. That's fantastic. Now, she was the person who pushed for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They thought that that was unrealistic and that would never happen, except, in fact, it did happen. She was very effective in getting that done. The Republicans blocked her nomination to become the head of the bureau that she created. Well, she said, okay, great. I'll go and join you in the Senate. Oops. Be careful what you wish for. So now she's going to go talk to CNBC about her new bill. And what they basically want to do is reinstitute Glass-Steagall. Now, what Glass-Steagall did is really important. It passed back in 1933, and it actually created a great era of stability in banking. It separated out the part of the bank where you deposit your money from the part of the bank where they do investment banking. And basically, the kind way of putting it is they invest their own money, or you can say they gamble with their own money. The reason you separate that out is because you don't want them gambling with your money, right? Because when they are allowed to gamble with your money, they take more risks because the downside is for you and the upside is for them. So now when we took Glass-Steagall away, at the end of Bill Clinton's term, by the way, it wound up being an absolute disaster. So now, interestingly, Elizabeth Warren has paired up with Republican Senator John McCain to bring it back and say, don't gamble with depositors' money. Very sensible. But when she goes on CNBC, ooh, they don't like that idea at all. Because CNBC basically represents the bankers. If they were PR flags for the bankers, they couldn't do a better job. Now, the first question by one of the anchors was fine. She aggressively challenged her, saying, well, some of the top bankers say that your bill would hurt competitiveness. Of course, that's what they always say. They say, keep letting me gamble with your money. But that's fine. She's challenging a United States Senator on the opposing view on her bill. Okay, no problem at all. Now, when Elizabeth Warren starts talking about the facts of regulation of banks in this country, that's when it gets interesting. You're going to see CNBC personality Brian Sullivan step in here to correct the record, except he gets his own ass corrected. Watch.
Senator, I will push back, though, on the relative security that you're portraying Glass-Steagall to have given us, because Continental Illinois in the early 80s was the seventh largest bank in America. It failed, almost set off basically another major banking crisis. Shouldn't we just tell the American consumer that no matter what we do, there will be bank boom and bust cycles, no matter what the laws and regulations? You can't protect everything.
No, that is just wrong.
Why?
Look at the history.
I have looked at history. We were filled with booms and busts from the Dutch tulip crisis to now.
From 1797 to 1933, the American banking system crashed about every 15 years. In 1933, we put good reforms in place for which Glass-Steagall was the centerpiece. And from 1933 to the early 1980s, that's a 50-year period, we didn't have any of that. None. We kept the system steady and secure. And it was only as we started deregulating, You start hitting the S&L crisis, and what did we do? We deregulated some more. And then you hit long-term capital management at the end of the 90s, and what did we do as a country? This country continued to deregulate more. And then we hit the big crash in 2008. You are not going to defend the proposition that regulation can never work.
I didn't say regulation never worked, Senator, by far and away. And I agree, there were fewer bank failures in that time after Glass-Steagall.
Fewer as in, of the big ones, zero.
But Continental Illinois was the 7th biggest bank in the United States when it failed.
It took 50 years to get there.
Okay, that was awesome. So, first of all, he's like, nah, you got to understand, no matter what we do, we're always going to have bank crashes. Now, why does he say that? Because the banks always say, oh, don't do regulation. It doesn't matter. Just, oh, the world's a crazy place. Nothing we can do. So don't regulate us. Let us keep gambling with your money, right? And, of course, every anchor on CNBC is a lapdog for the banks. So they just do their talking points. Ha! Senator, let me correct the record on this one. And then she comes in with this giant elbow. Bam! She's like, wait, hold on. Let's do a little bit of history. Glass-Steagall passed in 1933. 50 years of zero crashes. What happened to there's nothing we can do? Then you begin to deregulate in the 1980s, immediately a crash. That's, of course, when Reagan came in. You deregulate a little bit more, S&L crisis. Then you do the major deregulation. You take away Glass-Steagall at the end of around 1999, 2000, at the end of Clinton's term. And then just 8 years later, the biggest crash we've had since the Depression. Waves of deregulation leading to waves of gigantic crashes. When we had tight regulation, 50 years of no crashes. And then I love that the guy had the temerity to say, well, you know, I didn't say no regulation is the right answer or that it doesn't work. No, actually you did. You literally said, no matter what we do, there's nothing we can do about the bank crashes. So, but she's not quite done kicking their ass yet. One more round.
Glass-Steagall would not have prevented the financial crisis.
Not all by itself, that's absolutely right. But what Glass-Steagall can do is it can wind some more of the risk out of the system. It can help bring down the size of the largest banking institutions. Don't forget, you said there was too much concentration in the banking industry in 2008. Now here we are in 2013, and the big four are 30% bigger. That puts too much risk back in the system.
Well, there's other ways of shrinking them, obviously. But
with all due respect, Senator, every report I've read, every person I've spoken to says that there's a very, very, very slim chance of this even passing.
Well, let me put it this way. If you don't fight for it, the chances are zero.
3 different anchors came at her. And I love the excuse of the second male anchor there who's like, well, I mean, you seem to have gotten all the facts right, but there's probably other ways of fighting them other than your bill. Really? Which ones do you support? Oh, right. None of the CNBC anchors ever support any of the ways of re-regulating the banks or putting any control of their risk or gambling with our money on the banks. You don't support any of those bills. But when she's got you dead to rights, you're like, well, yeah, I mean, your bill, whatever, right? There's probably other bills. No, there aren't. And do you support any of them? No, you don't, because you work for the banks. CNBC is really disgusting, actually. And then finally, the last thing that they got is, okay, you beat us on all that, but ha-ha, it's not going to pass anyway. Well, I'll tell you what, Senator. I'm not sure I'm doing her accent right there. I don't know anybody who thinks that this bill can pass, because the rest of the senators are bought off by the banks. So, ha-ha, it's not going to work anyway. What are you wasting your time for? She's like, well, that's the same thing you guys told me on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And I believe that exists. And by the way, that's your best argument, CNBC, after you get your ass handed to you? Well, the rest of the senators are with us, basically the corrupt people who all work for the banks. But 3 wasn't enough, so Jim Cramer, another CNBC anchor, had to pile in. He wasn't on the show, so he tweeted afterwards, quote, there's some weird strain of thought that CNBC got beaten by Senator Warren. Well, I like the senator, but she had no impact. Sorry. She seemed to have an impact right on top of their heads. But basically, he's going back to that talking point saying, oh, she's not going to have an impact because we got the rest of Congress bought, so she's not going to have an impact. That bill's not going to pass. It's not going to pass. Otherwise, the banks might endanger the money that we get over here at CNBC. You're pathetic. I liked how she regulated on you. Warren G like a gangster.
So
Obviously,
that was Elizabeth Warren when she first got elected on November 6, 2012, where she got about 53% of the vote when she defeated Republican Senator Brown. And when she did that, that was when she first got into the Senate, right after she created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which she had to fight really hard against the Democrats, the Republicans, and the Obama administration. One of the things Obama liked to say was, we look to the future. And he said that in regards to bankers when they screwed over people. So Elizabeth Warren came in, she created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which has returned billions of dollars to millions of consumers who have been screwed over by the banks. They forced the banks and the credit card industries that screw over people to return their money. And she fought really hard back then. She's been watered down a little bit over the years. Now, we're going to take a look at another video. This one more Young Turks video about, they predicted the end of her campaign, and we're going to take a look at that. This was, I forgot exactly when this was. We're just going to take a look at it. So
yesterday did not go the way that Elizabeth Warren probably had been planning this past year, with her coming in 4th place with 9.2% of the vote, meaning that she is not going to be awarded any delegates coming out of that second contest. And you sort of got an idea that this was starting to sink in through her speech. We have just a little bit of it for you, but we're gonna show that to you, and then we want to look back a little bit on her campaign and try to figure out exactly how she got to this place. But more importantly, going forward in these upcoming 3 or so weeks of contests, what is likely to happen? What should she do? But first, here is some of her speech last night.
I also want to congratulate my friend and colleague, Amy Klobuchar, for showing just how wrong the pundits can be when they count a woman out. The question for us Democrats is whether it will be a long, bitter rehash of the same old divides in our party, or whether we can find another way. Senator Sanders and Mayor Buttigieg are both great people, and either one of them would be a far better president than Donald Trump. I respect them both. But the fight between factions in our party has taken a sharp turn in recent weeks, with ads mocking other candidates and with supporters of some candidates shouting curses at other Democratic candidates. These harsh tactics might work if you are willing to burn down the rest of the party in order to be the last man standing. They might work if you don't worry about leaving our party and our politics worse off than how you found it. And they might work if you think only you have all the answers and only you are the solution to all our problems. But if we're going to beat Donald Trump in November, we are going to need huge turnout within our party. And to get that turnout, we will need a nominee that the broadest coalition of our party feels like they can get behind.
I mean, my immediate reaction is I feel like the broadest coalition does have someone they feel that they can get behind. But I sort of see that speech as the rolling out of a strategy. That's not generally how she's been talking about this race so far, but obviously Iowa did not go well. New Hampshire went even worse. And so look, you've been following the race this entire time. You've talked a little bit about it, but what were some of the sort of standout moments that led her to this place?
First of all, David Dane named names last night. Joe Rosbars is in her campaign, is kind of an establishment person, let's leave it at that, in the campaign that's pushed her in this direction consistently and has been probably the root of almost all the mistakes in the campaign. But a turning point obviously was when she announced her plan for Medicare for All. It started to walk away from Medicare for All, and she did that in a couple of stages. And in the beginning, I was like, no, it's still Medicare for All. Anna yelled at me, and I thought that is going to create division in the party. No, or perhaps we're having a healthy debate that gets us to the right policies. And then she backed away more and more, and her polling went down, down, down. And then, but another moment happened that was very important. 200 Obama officials endorsed her. They made a big deal about it. And so all these the conservative wing of the party, the establishment wing of the party, gained strength within her campaign and destroyed it from the inside. And her drop is exactly at that time. There's no question about it. Those two key factors, when the establishment came in 100 strong to influence her to go in this direction, and when she started backpedaling from progressive platforms. Now, why is Amy Klobuchar doing well? Because she is actually the only other candidate other than Bernie Sanders to be consistent about her positions throughout. So Buttigieg was unequivocally for Medicare for all, then Medicare for all for those who kind of want it, maybe, right? And Elizabeth Warren, you know, I love her and I think she's a great progressive and has done some wonderful things, but took her campaign in an establishment direction. I knew it would, lead to disaster, and it did lead to disaster. We're not the bad guys for pointing it out. That's clearly what happened. Anyone who defies that is defying reality. It's absurd. So they say, like, for example, some will claim, no, it's that she backed Medicare for all more at that point. No, that's just counterfactual. Second of all, even if that were true, why would that lead to a decline if the guy who is most known for Medicare for all went up and not down? So they just have no logic at all. So now at this late date, that was a depressing speech. So number one, people being rude is establishment 101. Blaming people who are being rude. Oh, I don't like being criticized, so I'm gonna take rando on Twitter who said something and say, oh, that's it, that's Bernie Sanders, supporters, all of them, and Bernie Sanders himself, and everyone who's ever backed Bernie Sanders is that one guy on Twitter because someone was rude. Let's do civility and not talk about the differences that we have. Sorry, no deal. And so I said no deal when I was backing Warren as well, like meaning, hey, she's a great progressive. I don't know, I've said it probably 1,000 times. And so if somebody says, hey, Biden and Elizabeth Warren have the same banking policy, I'd say you're mental. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm being rude. Okay, they are completely different. Elizabeth Warren's banking policy is fantastic. Biden's banking policy is a disaster. I'm sorry, was I rude in pointing out your policy differences? Warren is right, Biden is wrong. But on other issues, now, unfortunately, Warren is wrong and Bernie is right. And so now she says, don't do that. Don't point out the differences. And I'm gonna pull a Chuck Todd and mainstream media 101 because these new Obama Clinton people in my campaign are telling me if I say that Bernie is rude, I'm gonna win. How's that working out for the rest of the candidates?
Yeah.
Why would you listen to those idiots?
So we don't have too much time, but I am interested in your opinion where if, like I see that speech and I think that like, okay, maybe we're gonna see some ads like that. It seems like a horrible direction going. I can't possibly imagine how that's gonna help her to win. But if you were to advise her, like we're only 2 states in. Klobuchar rose a bunch in just a week, which means that hypothetically candidates still could. What do you think she could do to increase her chances at this point?
No, it's too late. So I hate to say that, but it's done. So look, guys, we did advise her in a sense, in a couple of senses. So do I know people in our campaign? Yes. Do I think that there are wonderful progressives in our campaign? Absolutely. Did they have the right intentions? Yes. Did they have the right strategy? Yes. Until the establishment guys came in and imploded our campaign just like they do to every campaign. Beto O'Rourke had a great strategy in his Senate run. It was to distribute power to the volunteers. He broke every record there was on organizing. Then he had Obama's deputy campaign manager come and run his presidential campaign right in the goddamn ground. Hindenburg, boom, giant explosion. People see that and they go, oh, Obama campaign officials, they are geniuses. Then they drive Warren's campaign into the ground and nobody learns, even Elizabeth Warren's not learning. So but more importantly, on air.
Yeah.
And we supported Warren's campaign, or at least I did, I should speak for myself, when she was completely progressive. And then she stopped being completely progressive. We are sorry, we are not going to do things based on personality and loyalty to people and being civil. We are going to insist on doing things based on policy. I supported Tulsi Gabbard back when she was a progressive. I know it seems like a long time ago. So, but Tulsi Gabbard used to be progressive 95% of the time. Good enough, wonderful, great, right? Then now she's out there saying that Trump should have fired the Vindmans and Sondland and sending love letters to Rush Limbaugh. What? No, I care about policy, I care about facts. So at this point for Warren, how could listening to the idiots who ruined your campaign get you better results? Go the other direction, go the other direction. So, but it's hopeless. She can't, there is no, it's too late. I'm being realistic, I'm serious. I'm not rooting against her, I'm rooting for her. But it's too late, realistically, in politics. So your only remaining play is, I endorse Bernie Sanders, and I think he's going to make an incredible president, and we're going to unify the party. And you could say, oh, sure, Cenk, you endorse Bernie, you always like Bernie, you're biased. But I've said it 1,000 times, I've been right most of the time, not with Klobuchar, but with everyone else. And so, okay, ignore it. We'll see how it turns out for you. And by the way, she went more establishment after I and you and Anna endorsed Bernie Sanders. And that was from that moment on, total disaster. Not necessarily related to us. I don't know if we had a 1% rule, whatever it was, but she decided to go the establishment route. All right, if she goes and backs Bernie now, they win together. They win together. And by the way, there's a great case to be made. I know some people in Bernie's camp, I don't mean in his campaign, I mean his supporters, are gonna say, no way, it's heresy, etc. But her as VP does unite the party to some degree now that she's seen as more establishment. It's a winning progressive ticket overall. And guess what? Then Elizabeth Warren's in the White House. So if I'm advising her, do that before it gets too late to do that. And by the way, tick, 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 after a couple more primaries, and then you're at 5% and you're at 3%, then you got no leverage left. So my real opinion and analysis for her, because I really, really respect her and she's done wonderful work, is get on the Bernie team immediately. Stop listening to anyone from Obama or Hillary's campaign immediately. Otherwise, there's gonna be nothing left to salvage. Yeah. And we've got to have, at a bare minimum, you as Treasury Secretary. It's a must. So for God's sake, stop listening to them. Get back in the progressive camp and we win this thing together.
Don't miss your chance to win a trip to Los
Stop
Angeles.
the video here, and now we're going to talk about what happened. Now, I didn't see it coming at first. I started to get a little bit worried when the 200 Obama and Clinton officials endorsed her campaign, and when she started to walk away from Medicare for All, which was making her very popular. And I didn't see her downfall. And I definitely think that was the best move for her to endorse Bernie Sanders. She unfortunately did not do that. And there was definitely a fight between them, which might have had something to do with it. We're going to take a look at that in a second. But she was doing really well when she was following, she was doing her progressive policies when she was saying, we're going to do Medicare for all. She didn't waffle on all of them. She mostly waffled on Medicare for all. She said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to fight for it at the end of my first term or something. And then I'm going to get it in my second term, which really didn't make much sense. And, that was the mistake she made. And that's some of the advice she got from the establishment figures in her campaign. Now we're going to take a look at an ABC News report where they show where I personally think the chances of her and Bernie working together went down, and where she might have been unsalvageable for sure at that point. So it's Brad, play the 2-minute and 52-second video.
Now to the race for the White House, and those rising tensions between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders captured in new tapes of their post-debate confrontation where they call each other liars. Lindsay Davis is here with the latest. Good morning, Lindsay.
Good morning to you, boy. People were trying to read lips, read body language, right, for nearly 24 hours. The contentious moment that happened after the debate was replayed and analyzed to try to determine just what was said in that terse exchange when Senator Sanders' handshake was not reciprocated by Senator Warren. Well, now we know what was said, and both senators accuse each other of lying on national TV. Overnight, CNN releasing post-debate audio between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders right after the tense moment she refused to shake his outstretched hand.
I think you called me a liar on national TV.
What?
I think you called me a liar on national TV.
Let's not do it right now. You want to have that discussion, we'll have that discussion. You called me, you told me. All right, let's not do it now.
The tense exchange came after the pair traded blows about a 2018 conversation in which Warren claims Sanders said a woman could not win the election, a claim Sanders denied during the debate.
Well, as a matter of fact, I didn't say it. Anybody knows me, knows that it's incomprehensible that I would think that a woman could not be president of the United States.
Warren not backing down.
I think the best way to talk about who can win is by looking at people's winning record. So, can a woman beat Donald Trump? Look at the men on this stage. Collectively, they have lost 10 elections. The only people on this stage who have won every single election that they've been in are the women, Amy and me.
Their argument was seen live on air, but without sound. CNN says they pulled the audio from backup recordings of wireless microphones and released the clip 24 hours later. The onstage confrontation inadvertently broken up by fellow candidate Tom Steyer.
I don't want to get in the middle, but I just want to say hi, Bernie.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Sanders' wife, Jane, was subsequently asked about the comments leading up to this tense moment, and she told the Associated Press that sometimes people misremember things. She went on to say that she's not attacking Elizabeth Warren, but she knows that the comment about a woman not being able to win is nothing that her husband would ever say. But Tom Steyer, boy, he said now that he couldn't wait to get out of the way. You can understand why.
Neither one of them in the debate actually really wanted to get into it.
I mean, as a matter of fact, I think he said, I don't want to have the fight with her, right? And she said, Bernie's my friend.
So it's still he said, she said.
That's what it amounts to.
All right, Lindsay, thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Okay. I definitely think that was the start of the troubles. Allegedly, behind the scenes in the campaigns, they did not want to get into it at the debate. CNN did ask the question, which kind of caused the conflict. And I don't think it's a coincidence that they happened to just come upon the audio. I think they were trying to create a rift. The establishment media and the establishment was trying to create a rift in their campaign since the beginning, between their campaigns from the beginning, because they knew together they would actually be able to make a big difference, destroy the other candidates, and possibly win the presidency and transform the country. And they didn't want a non-establishment candidate to win the election, but definitely. And for let me just say, Bernie Sanders tried to get Elizabeth Warren to run in 2016. He never wanted to be president. He tried to push her to run. Instead, Elizabeth Warren made a deal with Hillary Clinton, which we're going to pull up the video graphic for that. I don't have it in the playlist. I'm going to send it to you, Brett, so you could play it. So check Discord. Ones. Okay, so I'm sending that now. We're going to take a look at the choice, what she did do instead of running in 2016. You should have the video now. This is a video from Rebel HQ from the Young Turks Network by reporter Emma Vigland, where she reported on what happened when Elizabeth Warren decided.
Article on Elizabeth Warren's relationship with Hillary Clinton came out in Politico a few days ago about how Warren leveraged a threat of a primary run in 2016 to prevent Clinton from appointing pro-Wall Street people to her theoretical cabinet. Obviously, that never happened because Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump, but this is from Politico magazine, which is very insidery, but they also wrote that devastating Obama piece where they delineated his opinion of all the candidates from inside information, and it rang very true, so I'm inclined to believe the story too, and it rings true with everything I've heard about Elizabeth Warren being a progressive legislator, from reporters and smart fellow progressives in the know, not just YouTubers without journalistic integrity who are picking apart her every move because they get views, specifically the Tulsi stands. Yeah, I'm not holding back anymore on her. In December 2014, Clinton's team began worrying that Warren was reconsidering a presidential run and arranged a meeting between the two principals at Clinton's home in Washington. Warren came in, quote, aggressive and firing on all cylinders, catching Clinton off guard, said a Clinton official familiar with the meeting. She pressed Clinton to commit to not appointing Wall Street-friendly people to her administration, as Warren felt Bill Clinton and Barack Obama had felt. It was true. Citigroup basically appointed Obama's whole cabinet. This also does give insight, too, into Warren's frustrating non-endorsement of Bernie Sanders in 2016, if you guys, of course, notoriously remember, or her action was notorious. She waited until the primary was basically over to throw her support behind Hillary Clinton. So she was the only female senator not to endorse Hillary Clinton, but just didn't endorse and just sat on the fence. I vehemently disagree with that. She endorsed Hillary after it was effectively done. But this does give you insight into how Warren had a behind-the-scenes relationship with Clinton that wasn't cozy, certainly, but was in place. And it was put in place by Warren, basically dangling the threat of a run in the years leading up to 2016 and that campaign, basically for concessions on Wall Street people that Clinton wanted to stack her administration with, which is in keeping with her personality and her leadership. That list, the contents of which have not been previously reported, was just the beginning of an intensive 2-year campaign by Warren, her staff, and outside allies to push, prod, and shape the would-be Clinton administration, an effort that also included an informal blacklist of Clinton allies that Warren and outside partners would resist if nominated for jobs in the Clinton administration, which included BlackRock chairman Larry Fink and Facebook's chief operating officer Sheryl Sandberg, which, that gives me so much great joy. That's the lean-in lady who's the godmother of elitist, centrist, white feminism. Just try harder, women, and you'll get that promotion. It gives me great joy that she was on Warren's blacklist. The constant interference sometimes frustrated and annoyed the former Secretary of State and her team. It was kind of a pain in the ass to be thinking about her all the time, recalled one Clinton transition official. But Clinton's team listened, aware of both Warren's credibility among progressives and her willingness to use her bully pulpit to condemn members of her own party. Even more acutely, they felt the ever-present threat that she'd throw her own hat into the ring. It's really fascinating that they saw her as that much of a threat. Obviously, none of these administration appointments ever came to pass because Clinton lost, but there was one paragraph in this article that was so important into giving you insight into Warren's theory of change, who she is as a person, who she is as a leader, and why I think she'd be a very good president and the most transformative one in decades, but why I believe Sanders' vision of change is much more effective. The 2-year campaign to mold the would-be Hillary Clinton administration is also a case study in Warren's theory of power, an approach her aides and allies sometimes refer to as the inside-outside game, combining tough, often hyperbolic rhetoric to create leverage with quieter, hands-on, person-to-person outreach. So that really crystallizes one of the most enormous differences between Sanders and Warren and their campaigns. I believe, and I think the Sanders campaign does, to create lasting change, you have to have an overwhelming movement from the outside to create pressure. And everything will be much harder if you're unable to create a grassroots campaign and a grassroots movement. Warren's theory of change, while I think extremely effective in the Senate, in terms of leading from a presidential level, I just don't know if it would have the same teeth. And beyond just the fact that I trust Bernie to fight harder for a lot of things, and I think Warren's ideology is very rooted in anti-corruption, anti-Wall Street, all of those things, but Sanders' leftism is broader. I mean, just to prove this point, why are we just hearing about her pressure on the Clinton campaign now, right? That's what happens when you play the inside-outside game, as opposed to putting outside pressure with a grassroots movement. So I just thought this article was really interesting, and I wanted to bring it to your guys' attention.
So, when Sanders did pressure Warren to run, push her to run in 2016, instead she chose to make a deal with Hillary Clinton, who would later go to lose the election, which was basically a mistake in my view. She should have backed the Senator Sanders in 2016 or ran herself in 2016. Now, yeah, and one of the other weaknesses in Warren's campaign was her switch to identity politics to continue to say, I'm a woman. I'm a woman. That's very nice. But the reason people liked you was not because you're a woman. It might have been part of it. But the reason people liked you was because of your policies. And I think that's a very important distinct point to make. So now we're going to take a look at after her campaign ended. We're going to take a look at two videos. The next video is from a show called The Hill Rising. The Hill Rising is a right populist Democratic and a Democrat progressive show. So it's a show done by a populist on the right and a populist on the left, essentially. And they're going to give their reactions right after Warren's campaign ended. They're going to talk a little bit about it. And then we're going to discuss the things they point out. So we're going to play that video. Right, it's the one that says crystal ball on it.
All right, Crystal, what's on your radar?
Well, way back, almost 6 years exactly, on February 11th, 2014, I made the case against Hillary Clinton on MSNBC. Now, many of the points I made seem obvious in retrospect, and in fact, many were pretty obvious at the time.
We have some background noise.
Had really given voice.
Well, I want to thank Your Eminence. This is really great to be with you again.
All right, now,
voice
all
to
right,
them.
you got it?
The tail end of that monologue, I made the case for the candidate I thought perfectly fit the moment. In a time when we badly need to be inspired and rallied and made to believe that America can once again be true to the American dream, we need someone who is mission-driven, who's clearly passionate, living and breathing and feeling in their bones the plight of the worker, of the middle class. That person is not Hillary Clinton. Here's the person that I want.
Now look, you built a factory and it turned into something terrific or a great idea. God bless. Keep a big hunk of it. But part of the underlying social contract is you take a hunk of that and pay forward for the next kid who comes along.
In an op-ed that I published along with it, I explained more, saying Warren is, for good reason, the public official most feared by Wall Street. Since coming to the Senate, she has aggressively questioned banking regulators on why Wall Street banks were not being vigorously prosecuted. She has argued for expanding Social Security, for increasing the minimum wage, for using the infrastructure of the post office to provide banking services to the poor. Most recently, she pressed the Obama administration to nominate more judges who come from a background in public interest work rather than from big corporations. She's been fearless, determined, and relentlessly true to her roots as an advocate for the middle and working classes. It honestly makes me sad to look back at the politician Elizabeth Warren was in those days. She was one of the only Democrats to fight against the Goldman Sachsing of the Obama administration. Her vision for the CFPB was truly brilliant. Her politics grounded in a proud tradition of economic populism. I believe that Elizabeth Warren would likely be president today had she run in 2016. And I believe that if the Elizabeth Warren that I begged to run back in 2014 had run this time, she'd be headed towards the Democratic nomination. The truth is, though, that Elizabeth Warren's campaign was lost long before this election cycle. Many politicians come into Washington fresh-faced and truly desiring to change the nation for the better, or at least that's what they tell themselves. But very quickly, they must choose. Will they conform to the existing system of deference to power and systemic corruption? Or will they do what Bernie and AOC and Omar and Tlaib have done, standing astride that system and refusing to bend, saying, I will stay an independent and not become a Democrat. I will call out the bipartisan war consensus even when the hawks are ascendant and it's politically unpopular. I will stand up for the rights of Palestinians even though there are only costs and no political upsides. I will challenge those in my own party who have gotten fat and lazy feeding at the government trough. I'll protest outside of the Speaker's office in solidarity with climate protesters, even though it terrifies me. I will back my brother in the movement at his lowest moment while he's laying on a hospital bed recovering from a heart attack, and the entire political world has declared him finished. Those are the difficult choices of an anti-establishment populist in Washington. Unfortunately, Elizabeth Warren long ago veered from that path. First came the decision not to run in 2016. She sat out the most critical election of our lifetime, even though she knew better than I did the flaws of Hillary Clinton. Warren had, of course, long been critical of HRC's Wall Street coziness. Bernie urged her to run. Biden asked Warren to join his ticket, but she demurred. Not out of principle, but out of political calculation that it'd just be too hard to go up against the Clinton machine. An abdication of duty when the nation called on her to step up. But look, running for president is a heavy burden, and so I could overlook the shirking of that responsibility. What is harder to forgive is what came next, when her supposed friend and ally, Bernie Sanders, who allegedly shares her politics and was fighting for the same values she had staked her career on, got into the race and started skyrocketing in the polls, even challenging Hillary for the lead. Rather than making the movement choice and backing the progressive, she sat it out. Now, it's impossible to say what would have happened had she jumped in on Bernie's side the way that AOC did this time. But it is certainly plausible that having the support of one of his colleagues who had her own power and following could have fundamentally shifted the race. Maybe that small margin in Iowa goes the other way, granting a momentum that changes the whole trajectory, giving us a strong nominee to go against Donald Trump, a nominee who would actually campaign in Michigan and Wisconsin. Things could be completely different. Of course, we'll never know, but we do know this. At that moment, Warren chose irrevocably to be a player in the game and not a revolutionary. Not even anti-establishment, but just another politician surrounded by the same old hacks who counsel caution and triangulation and leaning into tokenism like Planned Parenthood scarves and gender-centric attacks. As Zed Jelani, who worked to help elect her, wrote recently for the Washington Examiner, the problem with modern progressivism is how much it looks down on people who disagree. It's kind of elitism that makes populism impossible because you can't have populism without the population. The old Elizabeth Warren understood that. It appears that the new Elizabeth Warren has forgotten it. Now, the political world is shocked to watch her campaign crumble, reaching less than 10% in neighboring New Hampshire. The truth is, this trajectory was set in motion quite a while back. Her attempts to co-opt revolutionary rhetoric in service of an establishment campaign, sort of like Disney doing socialism, satisfied no one and left her unable to win more than one county in Iowa and an embarrassing distant fourth behind Klobe in New Hampshire. Now she's siding with culinary union bosses who are against Medicare for All, a policy she supposedly supports, all in order to take a cheap political shot at her friend, Bernie. Now, I'm not surprised, but I do mourn the loss of someone I once considered a real ally to the movement. Sagar, it does, like watching that old clip of me and how I felt about it and how she had conducted herself to that point, she really did take on the Obama administration in a way that was very courageous.
And you know what's funny? Before she started pulling all this, I liked Elizabeth Warren. Tucker Carlson once publicly said he might vote for Elizabeth Warren. And there's a reason for that. Before she started, basically, you know, I've called Pete Buttigieg astroturf neoliberalism. What Elizabeth Warren ended up becoming is an astroturfed populist. Is that she claimed to pay lip service to all of the stuff, and then in reality was the pink scarf, you know, the Planned Parenthood scarf president. That's what she wanted to be. She was doing all making fun of people who don't believe in gay marriage, just pandering totally to the woke elites of the New York Times who love her campaign for all of the wrong reasons, not for the right reasons. And that was always the issue, is that over and over again she did this, and it revealed to me that in a way, like maybe I was stupid for thinking, because it seemed so genuine that she would put these plans to paper on trade, on economic policy.
The economic patriotism.
Economic patriotism. I mean, early watchers of Rising know that I was all in on it. We were talking about it here. Tucker did a monologue, even praising it as one of the best documents that he's ever seen. And that is the type of stuff that cuts across parties, it cuts across populations, across classes. None of this woke pandering that she ultimately decided to hinge her campaign on. And you're right. I mean, this whole culinary union thing, regardless of whether you agree or not, like, what are you doing buying into this like Bernie bro narrative thing with attacking the culinary? It's so cynical, contra to her brand and contra to anything that she supposedly stands for. And that's why on this show, I started calling her out very, very beginning for being a liar and a phony. Ultimately, from the very beginning, about what she actually was as a person, which is what she ended up being about her own politics.
But it all comes back, I really think, to that decision to sit it out in 2016. Not just sit out, like not run herself, but then when Bernie is there running and has a real shot, that you just sit on your hands and don't do anything. Because in that moment, there are two ways to operate in this town. There's the sort of AOC Bernie way, where you just are like, you know, you take a lot of grief right? And it can impact your ability to quote unquote get things done within the system because people want to stand in your way and be roadblocks when you dare to criticize them and dare to stand outside of that system. It is a tough road, right? And so when it came to this point of her saying, you know what, I'm going to make the movement choice. I'm going to back Bernie because he shares my politics and this will be good, positive for the nation. Instead, she made the choice of saying, and this is like the road to hell, this is the Clinton road, of saying, you know what, the most important thing is for me to be in a position to get power.
Yeah, exactly.
So if I sit it out and then I back Hillary, then when she wins, I can be Treasury Secretary, whatever. And then I will be in position to exercise my power. But that is the road to what we have now. Because if everybody makes that calculation, everybody makes the calculation to just stay inside the system and not rock the boat and stand by whoever happens to have power, you end up with a total systemic rot, which is exactly what we have now. And a hollowness that I think has become completely apparent, not just to us, but to everything. Because you know what? AstroTurf neoliberalism actually works better because most of neoliberalism, frankly, is AstroTurf, right? And AstroTurf populism is just the most hollow thing that you can imagine.
Yeah, it really is. Easy to call out, too.
All right, Sagar, looking forward to your radar. That's next.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about what they're
an interesting fact for
a minute. Okay, so
us last week.
We're not going to, so a bit they were talking about what happened with Elizabeth Warren's campaign. And I disagree with them on some things. I still think she's somewhat of a progressive, but I think she's been watered down over the years by being in Washington. And it happens to the best of them. Representative Ocasio-Cortez at one point was protesting outside of Speaker Pelosi's office to try to get the Green New Deal. And recently she called her the mama bear of the Democratic Party, and she's been weakening on her rhetoric against her. The thing with that is, they're okay when you direct your rhetoric toward the Republicans, but they don't want you to criticize your own party. When you're not willing to criticize your own party, you're not going to be able to fight them as effectively. What people need to remember is there actually is a civil war in the Democratic Party. The progressives are trying to take over, and they're not going to take over successfully if they continue the way they're being now. They're not organized, first of all. They can use a movement on the right as an example. The Tea Party movement, they were able to be a bloc and a unit, and they successfully pushed the Republicans to the right. But the progressives could do that in the same way. But anyway, Elizabeth Warren has definitely been putting good policies, which we talked about on this show, forward in the Senate. She's weakened. I don't know what she's doing behind the scenes, so she might still be playing what they call the inside-outside game, but I'm not entirely sure right now. It definitely looks like it's much harder to put pressure on McConnell than it was to, I believe, the majority leader when she came in was Harry Reid. I think that's his name, yeah. And it seemed it might have been easier to pressure him. She got a lot more done back then. But during her campaign, she took on the Obama people, the Clinton people, the Kamala Harris people in her campaign. When they endorsed her and when they started working for her, they gave her a lot of bad advice. They pushed her away from her values. And she suffered a lot for that. And there was a point where she was ahead of everyone else in the polls. She eclipsed Bernie, she eclipsed Biden, and she was on her way to the nomination. This was before the voting started. And then she started to walk away from Medicare for All. She started to walk away from these things. And once you start to walk away from the things that make you popular, people start to question your values and what you believe in, and if you're actually going to fight for them. People worry about things like that. And it was definitely a mistake for her. Now, if I were giving her campaign advice, I would have told her to reject all of the Obama officials that endorsed her. Rejecting their endorsements and rejecting them to come to work for her, or rejecting any of the Clinton officials to work for her, rejecting the Kamala Harris officials to work for her. That's one of the best things she could have done, because they pushed her campaign in this terrible direction, and they set her on a trajectory that caused her to crash and burn. Now, she definitely weakened before that, but I think this is when she started to weaken more. And now we're going to take a look at one more video graphic for Elizabeth Warren. This is from a show called Secular Talk, where the host is Kyle Kulinski. I believe he was on the Young Turks Network. I'm not entirely sure yet, but we're going to take a look and see what his reaction was to the end of her campaign. I'll start the video over. It's not at the beginning.
Take a look at this. Bitter fights between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders in the primary have dampened enthusiasm for her as VP among some progressives. When the left-wing Roots Action circulated a letter asking Joe Biden to pick her, reception was cool. This is progressive groups as well as just run-of-the-mill progressive voters. Everybody is like, I don't know about all that, dog. I don't know about all that Elizabeth Warren and whatnot. People are not feeling her anymore. And it's kind of hilarious. Listen, here's the deal. This is, I sound like Biden. Here's the deal, Jack. She blew it. Her campaign was the Wile E. Coyote campaign. It was failure after failure after failure. People forget this. There was a moment in the race where she was leading. You want to know why she was leading? Very simple. She was basically saying, oh, I'm just like this Bernie guy. All his plans, they're my plans too. And also, I'm the more intellectual version of Bernie because I'm all about the plans and I'm professorial. And also, I'm younger and I'm a woman, which, who are we kidding, in the Democratic field, maybe there's a little bit of an advantage, you know what I'm saying? You know, because everybody, Democratic Party loves making history and, oh, first black president, and they want to do it with the first woman president too. So she had all these built-in advantages, being younger, being female, being more professorial, but she also was like, I'm with Bernie on all the policies. And the country was with Bernie on all the policies. She was leading. She was leading in the polls. She leapfrogged Bernie. She leapfrogged Biden. She was leading. She had a good couple debates. She was leading. And then what happened? Just bring in all the former Hillary Clinton staffers, all the former Kamala Harris staffers who ran her campaign into the ground too, because there was a moment when she was doing well, as well in the polls. And what happens? The advice they always give, and it's crystal clear, is you have to fully embrace the first female president thing and lean in on that stuff. And it turns out that doesn't sell politically. It doesn't sell politically. American people have no problem voting for a woman, but they want to vote for a woman who's first and foremost a person solving problems, not a woman who's going to give a speech, and every time she gives a speech, she's like, but I'm a woman. I'm a woman, by the way. Did you know I'm a woman? Yeah, we know, and we're fine with that. But don't tell us every 7.5 minutes, because that's silly. So they fully embraced the whole, like, woke stuff, and then it was a gradual decline into obscurity to the point where she got so desperate, she launched an attack on Bernie where she accused him of being a sexist, basically, and she was donezo. She was donezo. Embarrassing. Finished in third in her own state. Pathetic. Beyond pathetic. And so now the chickens are coming home to roost. Didn't endorse Bernie when she dropped out, so ideologically, what the hell does she believe? Nobody knows. And that's why the left now soured on her. We don't know what you believe. You think we like you, Elizabeth Warren, simply because you're Elizabeth Warren? No, people liked you because you did the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. People liked you because you were nominally further to the left of every other, Democratic senator except Bernie. People liked you for that reason. Now, you won't even side with the guy who you nominally agree with on more things when you drop out, which shows that, like, petty personal drama overrides policy substance for you. What the hell do you believe? You don't even know what you believe. You don't even know what you believe. So, of course, the left is going to sour on you because the left cares about policy. You clearly don't as much. We thought you did, but you don't. So, congratulations. Congratulations. And by the way, this one of the saddest videos I've ever seen. I forget who was interviewing her, but it was on MSNBC. Somebody asked her, like, would you accept a VP slot? Instant answer from Warren. Yes. Thirsty as fuck. Thirsty. It was so sad. It was like, there was like desperation in it. Like, yes, I want more power. Take me seriously. In the quest to get that power, she destroyed everything that was good about her. Everything. You know what move would have made sense for her? First of all, she never took on the Kamala and Hillary people. She might have won because her strategy was right early on. But let's say that didn't happen. If she backed Bernie at the right time, dropped out before Super Tuesday, backed Bernie, Very possible Bernie could have won. And then what happens, Liz, is it probably would be a Bernie Warren ticket, and then you inherit the movement after 1 or 2 terms of Bernie Sanders. That's what could have happened. But you'd rather accuse him of being a sexist, destroy all of your credibility, and then try to play the game with the establishment. Yes, I'll accept you. And by the way, what is the argument that she would make behind the scenes to the Biden people? Oh, I would unite the party because I'm the left one. I could bridge the gap between the left and the establishment. So that's why you got to pick me. Well, turns out left-wing voters and the left-wing groups are both like, that argument is weak because we now all hate you.
Now, see, that's the kind of reaction she got when she made a lot of her mistakes. Let's talk about some of her policies that I think were preferable. She had a $1.25 trillion plan that included canceling pretty much all student debt and eliminating tuition at every public college. Now, people ask, how is she going to pay for that? She had a wealth tax, which was a 2-cent tax on, I think, after 300 million, or on your $551st millionth dollar, or $501st millionth dollar, if I'm remembering this correctly, you get a 2-cent tax on that dollar, and that would raise about $2.75 trillion over 10 years, and that's more than enough to pay for a $1.25 trillion plan. And people really liked that plan. That's one of the reasons she was supported. And when she was unequivocally supporting Medicare for all, the fact that she's tougher on Wall Street than any senator currently was, so maybe besides Bernie, but she's tough on Wall Street. People like that. There's a lot of different policies that people like that she supported. And that's when she was riding high. And then when she started to back away, she kind of shot her credibility. And when she didn't endorse Bernie, when she dropped out, she shot her credibility more. Now, it's just a moment in time. People might forget. She's been making very good proposals in the Senate now. I believe we're going to cover some of them later on the show, later in the week. Or next week, there's one about childcare. Because of the pandemic, there's issues with childcare. She has a great proposal for that we're going to cover. But she's definitely a weaker version of the Elizabeth Warren that came into the Senate, and a weaker version of Professor Warren, who got the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Now, do I think that she's better than Biden? 100%. Do I think she's better than Bloomberg? Yes. I think she's better than most of all the Democrats that were running this time around. Definitely. And I still think she would have been a great president, but I don't know how she would have conducted herself, because she weakened over the years. Now I have the exact numbers for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which she created. It returned $12 billion to about 29 million consumers who were cheated. And that was one of the reasons people like her, that she was able to do that. These people were cheated by the banks. They were cheated by the credit card industry. And this agency comes in and says, no, you're going to give that money back. That's not your money. You cheated them. And she was very, you should look at her during the Wells Fargo scandal, where they were opening up fake accounts and fake and signing people up for credit cards. She destroyed everyone in the Senate hearing who was from Wells Fargo. She literally told the CEO of Wells Fargo, nothing's going to change until you're fired or you resign. And people like that. That's why people liked about her. They did not like when she started playing the woman card. They did, because that's what Hillary did. Look where that got her. She won the Democratic primaries, then she lost the election. And yeah. So now we're going to move on from Elizabeth Warren, sort of. And we're going to talk about Mayor Bloomberg. Now, Mayor Bloomberg ran for president. He spent, I believe, about $500 million or $1 billion, wasted all of his money. He put out these really polished ads where he looked good, and his policies were terrible. he was basically the mayor of Wall Street when he was mayor of New York. He was one of the worst mayors we've had, and coming from New York, and definitely he's not. He's better than. He's definitely okay on the issue of guns, well, sort of, and he's okay on certain issues, but he doesn't always. In one of the debates, he literally said, when they asked about the Democrats, he said, I donated to their campaigns when he was talking about the people in Congress. So he literally almost admitted on national TV that he bought people who are in Congress right now. And he claims to care about gun control and stuff like that, but he supported Elizabeth Warren's opponent for the Senate race who didn't care about that. So he's really ideologically messed up. He's corrupt. He is one of the elites. And now we're going to, I'm not even going to bother covering most of his campaign. We're just going to take a look at what destroyed his campaign. Now we're going to play a video from Rebel HQ, Emma Vigeland, who is, it's the second video on the playlist, and she's talking about what happened when, that's the Bernie, okay, where Warren destroys Bloomberg in the debates, and that's actually what destroyed him. His polling was high until then, and then she attacked him. They saw he didn't know how to debate, and his polling numbers went down. Now let's take a look at this
I'd like
report.
to talk about who we're running against. A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Mayor Bloomberg. Democrats are not going to win if we have a nominee who has a history of hiding his tax returns, of harassing women, and of supporting racist policies like redlining and stop and frisk. Look, I'll support whoever the Democratic nominee is, but understand this. Democrats take a huge risk if we just substitute one arrogant billionaire for another. This country has worked for the rich for a long time and left everyone else in the dirt. When the mayor says that he apologized, listen very closely to the apology. The language he used is about stop and frisk. It's about how it turned out. Now, this isn't about how it turned out. This is about what it was designed to do to begin with. It targeted communities of color. It targeted black and brown men from the beginning. And if you want to issue a real apology, then the apology has to start with the intent of the plan as it was put together and the willful ignorance day by day by day of admitting what was happening, even as people protested in your own street, shutting out the sounds of people telling you how your own policy was breaking their lives. You need a different apology.
Senator,
here,
thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor.
Goddamn, Elizabeth Warren came out swinging tonight, just swinging, and that was that first clip. That was the first time she spoke. That's how intense she was, and it's just the beginning. She ended him again on the non-disclosure agreements he had women sign about sexual harassment misconduct.
He has gotten some number of women, dozens, who knows, to sign non-disclosure agreements, both for sexual harassment and for gender discrimination in the workplace. So, Mr. Mayor, are you willing to release all of those women from those non-disclosure agreements so we can hear their side of the story?
We have a very few non-disclosure agreements.
How many is
Let me
that?
finish.
How many is that?
None of them accuse me of doing anything other than maybe they didn't like a joke I told. And let me just put, there's agreements between two parties that wanted to keep it quiet, and that's up to them. They signed those agreements, and we'll live with it.
So wait, when you say it is up to, I just want to be clear. Some is how many? And when you say they signed them and they wanted them, if they wish now to speak out and tell their side of the story about what it is they allege, that's now okay with you? You're releasing them on television tonight?
Senator? No.
Is that right?
Senator, the company and somebody else, in this case, a man or a woman, or could be more than that, they decided when they made an agreement that they wanted to keep it quiet for everybody's interest. They signed the agreements, and that's what we're going to live with.
I'm sorry. So in this debate, even Biden is going after Bloomberg's record. I mean, again, if Biden was the nominee against Bloomberg, I'd knock on, or if it was just Biden and Bloomberg, I'd knock on doors for Biden. That's how scary Mike Bloomberg is. And Elizabeth Warren has really stepped up. I thought she would keep doing this unity BS, but this is the Warren we knew and loved. You know, this is who she is when she's not listening to her consultants. This is the Warren who got to the top of the polls and was a front runner for a long, long time. It's too late now, but she seemed to have no F's to give it at this point. I know I can't really curse. I would like to, but don't want to get demonetized. This is the Warren who could have won the Democratic nomination if she kept running like this. I mean, ironically, and in a good way, it's allowed for Bernie Sanders to rise to the top. So if she didn't let those Obama advisors come into her campaign and she didn't listen to those idiot establishment types, she could have had it. She could have had it. And tonight is just proving that. But no matter her mistakes, honestly, she performed a public service tonight, and she's made a lot of mistakes recently in this election cycle, but she'll go down as a hero because of her absolute dismantlement, not dismemberment, dismantlement of Michael Bloomberg tonight, who's the greatest threat to American democracy in a long time, because it would be a right-wing takeover of the left party when we have a wannabe fascist in office. Trump by himself is not the greatest threat. He's close, but the greatest threat is if there's no left-wing opposition, and that's what Bloomberg is trying to solidify with his candidacy and buying the presidency. Thank you, Elizabeth Warren.
Now, Mayor Bloomberg was one of the worst candidates we've seen in a long time. He supported racist policies like redlining, which redlining basically said to that banks can't loan to certain communities, mostly poor minority communities, communities of color, but they found out when they did a study, if you have the same income and you're in a different community and you're not in the community that's been redlined, you can get a loan. And they found out by that it's a racist policy. And Mayor Bloomberg was caught on tape defending that policy. He did stop and frisk as the mayor, and he apologized for it, a fake apology, right before he ran for the election. He didn't mean a word of it. He just apologized because he's running, and he wants you to think he wanted you to think he was sorry. And he was only running most likely to give himself tax cuts and other things. And he was talking about lapel grants, which is very nice, expanded that, but that was a policy that was popular a long time ago. It's great if you want to add that to your platform, but there's many other good, better, much better things that you can do. And when he was arguing with Bernie Sanders, he was talking about, in the debate, which we don't have a clip of right now, but he was talking about how Bernie was going to take people off the insurance they love. I talked to many people. No one loves their insurance unless you're in the top 15, 20% of people, maybe the top 30% bracket. A lot of people have terrible insurance. They'd love to have Medicare for all, which is expanded coverage. It actually costs less over time because right now we pay twice as much per capita any other nation for healthcare. So anyway, we're going to take a look at one more video where actually Elizabeth Warren takes credit for Michael Bloomberg losing the race. Now we're going to take a look at that video, and then we're going to move on from Michael Bloomberg, Mayor Michael Bloomberg.
Senator, you outlasted Mike Bloomberg in this campaign.
Oh, yeah. Was he still in that race?
He was still in that race, but nobody could tell after you destroyed him on the debate stage that way. A lot of postmortems on his campaign credit you, basically, with single-handedly tanking his candidacy with the way you took him apart in that debate. Is that what you were trying to do?
Yes.
Do you take credit?
Sure. But the point is, he's not going to be the Democratic nominee, and he shouldn't be the Democratic nominee. In my view, he was absolutely the riskiest candidate for Democrats on that stage. And let me tell you part of the reason why. All of those things in his history mean that he could never launch any of those attacks against Donald Trump. Think about the things we are going to need to talk about. Hiding your taxes, history with women, embracing racist policies, when you're in charge, helping bazillionaires and leaving everybody else behind. Shoot, he wouldn't even be able to launch the autocrat argument against him because Michael Bloomberg's the guy who, when he was mayor, literally got the change in the laws so he could hang on to power longer. So from my perspective, the idea that a billionaire would just spend enough money to buy his way onto the stage and then not be able to be an effective candidate against Donald Trump, that was not good for democracy, the billionaire buying his way on, and not good for Democrats, a guy who I think would have had the worst chance against Donald Trump.
I'd like to talk about who we're running against. A billionaire who calls women fat broads.
Can you turn that? Yeah. Okay. Sure. Okay. So I'll just talk until he gets back. When Bloomberg was mayor, he had these ridiculous policies of banning the Super Size Me at McDonald's. No, that's one of the most ridiculous things. And he shut down the Occupy Wall Street movement. That was him, single-handedly. The judge ruled it was constitutional. He said something about how we have to wait to understand what the ruling of the judge means. And then he started to let people back in, but the park, and then they couldn't stay overnight, which was the whole point of the Occupy Wall Street movement. Now, Bloomberg definitely wasted a lot of money in that race, which I really don't care. Let him waste the money. He has like 53 billion, 52 billion now, I think. But he got behind Biden really quick. And then he was dangling this carrot of $1 billion or 500,000 or something to the candidate who can beat, who becomes the nominee, and these offices were going to be able to be used, and all this dangling of the carrot, which he used to keep some candidates in check from attacking him. But Elizabeth Warren seemed to not care about that. She probably knew he wouldn't give her the money anyway if she won, because she would regulate his friends on Wall Street. And that's definitely one of the more important things to mention. And I doubt he would have given Bernie Sanders the money either. And there was a point where they excluded Tulsi Gabbard from the debates. I forget exactly what happened, but they had a rule change where she couldn't come to the debates. Now, Bloomberg gives this amount of money to the DNC. He's in the debates. Great. But that's ridiculous. Personally, I think anyone should be allowed into the debates. And I also think, in regard to third parties, I think they should also be allowed on the debate stage. I don't like the idea of excluding anyone from the debates. It's the democracy, and everyone should be heard. And great, let Bloomberg be hell or heard. But he should not be buying his way onto the debate stage. That is ridiculous. He bought most of his support, and once Elizabeth Warren attacked him, his support shattered. His polls went down, and he couldn't debate. He doesn't know how to debate. Go back and watch his old mayoral debates. He's the one of the debaters you've ever seen. So we're going to move on from Mayor Michael Bloomberg now, and we are going to take a look at Bernie Sanders. And we're going to start with the prediction after Super Tuesday. So we could talk about that a little bit, which was entirely wrong, by the way.
Is going to have a much stronger showing tonight
than
originally expected.
Go to the beginning of the recording. You missed a name.
Since Biden is going to have a much stronger showing tonight than originally expected, going forward, we're going to have trench warfare. And it is about to get way, way uglier. Yep. So it's not me saying we're going to do it. It's me telling you, because I know the progressive base and I know the establishment, that we're going to go to war, and a war like you've never seen. because progressives online are not going to go quietly into the night, into that good night. They're not going to be like, oh, Joe Biden's senile, we'll let it go. Joe Biden has an awful record on civil rights, awful record on the bankruptcy bill, and I can go on. Oh, we'll let it go. We'll let it go. And the mainstream media is not going to turn around and be like, you know what? Maybe we should discuss Joe Biden's true record, right? They're not going to do that. So now we got mano a mano, we got Bernie versus Biden, and we are going to clash like you've never seen before.
So, all right, and it gets to the point though, you got to go because you got stuff to do. But what does Bernie do? Is he going to change rhetoric? Is he going to change presentation? Is he going to change anything? Or is it just going to be a war that I think in the end Bernie will lose?
No, Biden does not win that war.
No, Bernie, that's why I didn't say Biden will win, that Bernie will lose somehow, combined, whether it's Biden or a brokered convention and Mike Bloomberg is the nominee, or Elizabeth Warren is some compromise nominee, or Beto O'Rourke is the nominee, or Michelle Obama is the nominee.
Yeah, I don't, look.
I don't even
No, guys, 2020 is everything, and we're in the middle of it right now. This is Super Tuesday. It doesn't get any more real than this. So, look, fine, I'll do it, okay? I feel like I said this my whole life. Fine, I'll do it. Okay, no matter what happens tonight, if the establishment media continues to lie about Biden's record, we all have to go and collectively kick their goddamn asses. Of course not physically, we're progressives, but yes, we will be forceful. You're forceful in your lies, lie after lie after lie after lie. Okay, we're going to call it out. We are going to be very, 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 very forceful. And they say, oh no, don't watch online stuff. No, they're illegitimate. We legitimate people lie on behalf of Joe Biden and the establishment. We're not going to take your lies anymore. Joe Biden did not get arrested with Nelson Mandela. Who makes up a lie like that? An incredibly stupid person makes up a lie like that. An incredibly immoral person makes up a lie like that. Can you imagine if somebody asked you and you said you got arrested with Nelson Mandela? Stolen valor. That's what Joe Biden is. He's stolen valor.
Okay, let me just add, because I'd like you to think about this as you go do your things, right? Is that's a fine political tactic to take when you're trying to beat Joe Biden, unquestionably.
And we will beat him.
Okay, all right, but there is a second component to that, to tearing Joe Biden down. And if Bernie Sanders wants to be the nominee and have the chance to beat Trump and be president of the United States, he has to show political moxie too. He's never had to. This movement happened with him saying the exact same thing, but this movement is not going to grow big enough for him to win. It might tear Biden down, but it's not going to grow big enough for him to win without him doing something to quell the fears.
I know, he's got to create miracle after miracle after miracle to get past the mainstream media lies. It's true, it is true. Brent's telling the truth, it's true. But it is because he has to overcome the mountain of lies of the mainstream media. Yes, tyt.com/go. Look, are you kidding me? We need to be sustainable in the middle of this trench warfare. And it is. It's not of our making. We thought look, a week ago, I would have told you, I did tell you, Super Tuesday, I think we got this. Remember, we were talking about Whisper of a Dream. I think it might be over on Super Tuesday. So I'm not saying this on behalf of TYT or anything like that. We thought it was almost over. Bernie was going to win. Now it's not over. Now we're in a tie. And now we got absolute dig-in warfare against the establishment. But we didn't start the war. They'll lie about it again. We didn't start the war. They started the war. They've been lying about Bernie Sanders. For God's sake, on Castro, I could give you 1,000 examples. Bernie Sanders said the same exact thing as Obama. Everyone on TV is lying like, oh my God, what an outrageous thing Bernie Sanders said. Obama said the same thing. No, shut up. Don't cover it. Don't cover it. Don't cover it. Obama said the same thing. Is Obama pro Fidel Castro? Same exact thing. God damn it, tell the truth. God damn it, tell the truth. If you're not going to do it, we're going to do it, okay? And so you want to go to war, we'll go to war. And that is what this is. We cannot let Biden win. Guys, not just on progressives versus establishment. This is so important. I need you to understand this. Biden is not going to beat Trump. Biden is either near senile or actually senile. Watch any of the tapes. And Biden lies nonstop. He's going to get caught. Okay, the media is covering for him, but they're not going to be able to cover when the Republicans come for him. And when Trump comes for him, he's not going to beat Trump. The establishment candidate is less likely to beat Trump anyway. We just had 2016. The establishment candidate lost to a doofus like Trump. And now here we go, an establishment candidate that is far worse with his mental faculties under question. His record worse than Hillary Clinton's. He lies 1,000 times more than Hillary Clinton did, right? And you're going to run that guy against Trump, and we're going to lose to Trump again and maybe lose our democracy? Hell no. Hell no. No, Bernie Sanders is going to win this race. And I'm telling you right now, and it's not just, hey, let's go fight. It's also a prediction. Biden is not capable of winning this, and we're not doing any brokered convention where they give it to someone who didn't get less votes. Not going to happen. Bernie Sanders is going to be the nominee. I'm telling you right now. Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube.
I'm going to talk about that for a minute. They did make two predictions there. One of them said that Biden is going to, Bernie's going to lose, but Biden's not going to win. That's essentially what happened. I mean, Bernie did lose, and Biden didn't exactly win by himself. There are reports now that Obama made phone calls to Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, and Beto O'Rourke before Super Tuesday. Now, once they were able to drop out and endorse Biden, then he went up in the polls. And people might be wondering why he got Beto O'Rourke to endorse him. Beto O'Rourke is popular in Texas, and Bernie was going to win Texas by a certain margin. But they knew they couldn't take California from him. Biden was coming in third place in California. Bernie Sanders came in first. Elizabeth Warren came in second, and Biden came in like third or more. And Minnesota, there was a chance Bernie might, I think it was either Bernie was going to win Minnesota or Klobuchar was going to win Minnesota. Once Klobuchar dropped out and endorsed Biden, he gets Minnesota. Klobuchar is very popular in Minnesota. And there's also evidence to say if Elizabeth Warren dropped out, Bernie Sanders might have won one more state. He didn't even have to endorse him. He would have won more states. And he would have been in a much stronger position post-Super Tuesday. Now, we're going to take a look at a video from Secular Talk, Kyle Kulinski's show, where he actually lays out what went wrong in Bernie's campaign. He predicted he was going to lose before he lost. And he lays out the reasons why. We're going to take a look at that. And it's a long video, so we're going to pause it in between, and we're going to talk about certain things, and we're going to go there now. This is before Bernie lost, but he already saw it coming.
Chunk of they're really now. We have to also at the same time look at this with clear eyes and a clear head. And the fact of the matter is, barring a major medical event for Joe Biden, the race is effectively over. And Bernie Sanders is significantly behind. There really is no more path to him for the nomination. Now, again, that wouldn't stop me from going to vote for him because I know how good it feels, and I would recommend everybody else out there does the same thing. But let's talk about... Now, here's the difficult part, guys. This is what we're going to do now. We're going to talk about what the Bernie campaign did right, and we're going to talk about what the Bernie campaign did wrong, and just the race in general and how it unfolded. So let's start on a positive note. What did the Bernie campaign do right? Well... And a lot of people won't admit this on the left, but I think they're being silly if they don't admit this. Their strategy right up until Super Tuesday was basically flawless given the state of the race. So I want to give a hell of a lot of credit not only to Bernie, but also to Fahd Shakir, who is Bernie's campaign manager, because he was driven by the data, and he was very shrewd and clever, and he got us that big lead up until Super Tuesday. So there were a few instances where I wanted, even prior to Super Tuesday, hey, Bernie, go harder at Biden, for example. And the campaign was like, nope, not going to do it. And it turns out, you ready for this? Early on, they were correct at that time. They were correct. Early on, it would not have made sense for Bernie to go hard at Biden. Why? The campaign had very solid data that when Bernie does go hard at Biden, Bernie goes down. So early on, that the strategy that they were running was perfect. Why do I say that? We were winning, and we were easily winning. But here's the problem. The plan was basically, hey, how do we get Bernie to have a solid 30% chunk of support in every single state. Okay? Understand that? Very simple. We have a fractured field. We got a jillion candidates out there. So what do we need to win? Well, in a fractured field, Bernie's going to just need a plurality. This was their thinking. Okay, if he has the most votes, he's going to win. So they just need a plurality with over a dozen people running. Let's craft a strategy to get Bernie that solid 30% support in every state, and then he'll win. And as you saw in Iowa, in New Hampshire, and in Nevada, that strategy was working perfectly. I don't want to break anybody's heart here, but the race was ours. The race was ours. So that strategy the whole time of Bernie being Bernie going out there doing his standard stump speech, repping his lane, arguing for his position, doing the same damn thing he did.
All right, so we're going to pause the video there for a second. And what he's basically saying is, in the beginning, Bernie Sanders' strategy was don't attack Biden because it'll make him go down in the polls. He's going to give his speech. He's going to do the same thing that created his movement. He's going to essentially, you don't need, he needs to get a plurality of the votes, not a majority, because there's 12 candidates, is what he's saying. So when you only have that amount of candidates, you only need a plurality. And Bernie's strategy was tailored to get him a plurality. He got the most votes in Iowa. He got the most votes in New Hampshire. I believe New Hampshire, yeah. Nevada, I think, and some of the other states. And when he was able to do that, he did really well. And definitely. So we're going to play and we're going to see what else he says about the strategy.
The last time around, that was working perfectly. Now, here's the problem. And this is where we get into what went wrong. Bloody Monday happened. Bloody Monday absolutely, positively, 100%, without a doubt, changed the dynamics of this race. And what I mean by that is the establishment coalescing, in retrospect, was a mountain that was too tall for us to climb. Now, in the moment, even I was looking at what was happening. I was like, I don't know. This might not hurt Bernie because there's some data that shows that most of Mayor Pete's supporters, or the plurality of Mayor Pete's supporters, would go to Bernie. He's number one on their list, so maybe it'll help him. So there was a question mark. Hey, this might actually end up helping us. But that turned out to be wrong, and that polling data turned out to be outdated. And what happened was Mayor Pete and Amy Klobuchar dropped out, endorsed Biden. They brought in Beto O'Rourke to also endorse Biden. Now, you might say, hold on, man. Beto's not popular, so it's not going to help him. Beto O'Rourke is popular in one place in the country, Texas, where he lives and where he ran and where he almost won and beat Ted Cruz. So that Beto endorsement could have given Biden a 3%, 4% bump that got him over the edge in Texas, a state that looked like we were going to win. And Obama, of course, facilitated the phone call, the Bloody Monday and the endorsement and the big event that they did. So you didn't have Bernie versus Biden. You had Bernie versus Biden and Mayor Pete and Amy Klobuchar and Beto O'Rourke and Barack Obama. And the coalescing worked. The coalescing worked because all of those voters who were scattered all over the place with all those different candidates, they really did line up behind Biden. I'm sure many of them voted for Biden and they don't even necessarily like him. They're just like, I don't know, I guess him because my guy dropped out and said him. All right.
I'm going to pause that for a second.
And
so saying there is those endorsements were one of the keys to Bernie's downfall. And like I was saying before, which he actually reiterated, which I didn't remember that he said, was Beto O'Rourke was important for Texas. Now, he did not mention that Bernie was going to win Texas based on the polling, and that might have been why they brought him in. Now, there, like I was saying before, there's evidence that Obama called all three of these people before Bloody Monday when these endorsements happened, and everyone's like, "Oh, Obama's a progressive." Obama is not a progressive. Obama is an establishment was an establishment president. He didn't change that much, and definitely he wasn't a fighter. He wasn't a progressive. He was a terrible manager. He lost the Senate and the House and thousands of seats for Democrats when he was the president. He's not good at his job, and he's not a progressive. He facilitated all this stuff. He doesn't want Bernie to win because he's also has a massive ego, and he thought Obamacare was the best thing ever. And if we go to a system like Medicare for all, that would be saying that his idea wasn't good enough. And let me just mention, his idea was thought of in a Republican think tank. It was essentially what Mitt Romney was going to put into place if he won. So he just stole somebody else's idea, put the name Obama in front of it. That shows his ego. And in an interview, another thing about Obama's ego is he said, "Oh, I wrote my book myself. My wife ghost wrote her book." He had to point that out. So he has a massive ego. That's part of the reason he didn't want Bernie to win. The other part is he's not a real progressive. His mentor in the Senate was Joe Lieberman. Joe Lieberman is a conservative establishment conservative establishment Democrat, and that was his mentor in the Senate. And Obama basically single-handedly stopped Bernie Sanders from winning. Not single-handedly. He couldn't force any of them to endorse them, but his phone calls did lead to their endorsements, and their endorsements made it impossible for Bernie Sanders. Now we're going to press play and continue the video.
On top of that, yes, Elizabeth Warren also effectively functioned as a spoiler. She siphoned just enough votes from Bernie on Super Tuesday where he ended up getting his clock cleaned. You know, many experts say if Elizabeth Warren had just dropped out, not drop out and endorse Bernie, just dropped out. If she did that on Super Tuesday, 3 or 4 more states would have went to Bernie. So that could have totally changed the nature of this race. And even given the Super Tuesday, or I should say the Bloody Monday situation, which led to the Super Tuesday bloodbath, even in the scenario where Mayor Pete and Amy Klobuchar did the exact same thing with Biden, and if Warren dropped out, Bernie would still be in a much stronger position. So now, but here's the thing, guys. I don't want to make too many excuses.
Pause it for a second.
Because
now what he's saying is Elizabeth Warren acted as a spoiler, which is effectively true. She was another progressive, at this point a watered-down progressive, but still progressive in the race. She was taking a lot of votes from Bernie. And if she would have dropped out, definitely he would have done a lot better. So that's definitely a factor. I would add, one of the best things Bernie could have done was something that one of his campaign officials behind the scenes recommended that he do. They recommended that he offer Elizabeth Warren the vice presidential slot. And by doing in exchange for her endorsement and for her to drop out before Super Tuesday. If he would have listened to the advice of that campaign official, maybe he'd be in a stronger position. Maybe he would have won the nomination. He did not listen. Now, I understand they had a fight, but this is about policy. It should always be about policy. Policy should come first. And if he had to offer her that to get her endorsement, I say so be it. And you got a progressive ticket. You got 2 strong progressives together. They're much stronger running for the presidency. And it definitely would have been a strategic move. Now, Bernie Sanders also rejected Tulsi Gabbard's endorsement behind the scenes, which I think was a fatal mistake on his part. That endorsement was very important. He did not get the endorsement from Andrew Yang, which would have been a very important endorsement as well. He also could have gotten Tom Steyer's endorsement. Tom Steyer cares about the environment. Tom Steyer had an affinity for Bernie Sanders for whatever reason. He could have got his endorsement. Now, he didn't do any of that. Bernie was apparently not good, according to behind-the-scenes reporting, about getting endorsements. Now, don't have the exact articles here, but from what I've read, was not good at getting these endorsements. And another thing that hurt him, that I'm not sure if they mentioned, was Clyburn's endorsement. In South Carolina, Jim Clyburn is a representative there that a lot of the older people look to as an advisor. Now, Jim Clyburn had said previously he was not going to make an endorsement during the primaries. He lied, essentially, and endorsed Joe Biden. And once Joe Biden won South Carolina, that momentum carried him and allowed Obama to be able to push for these things for him. Obama actually told him not to run, by the way. So once he had this momentum going, he was able to get these endorsements through Obama. He was able to essentially crush Bernie Sanders. And definitely very important factors that I was mentioning. So we're going to keep going with the video. You can play.
It's easy to say we would have won it if the dynamics didn't change. But the fact of the matter is, the dynamics changed. And that's why, immediately after Super Tuesday, you saw me come out here and lay out a strategy that I needed the Bernie campaign to follow. Because my perception of it is, and this is not a shot at Bernie, this is not a shot at Foz, but my perception of it is they didn't understand the colossal shift in the race and the momentum change, and they just thought like, okay, now we're down to one-on-one, and that's a good thing, and we think we could beat Biden in a one-on-one race. But in my estimation, looking at how he ran post-Super Tuesday, they didn't adjust their strategy at all. Bernie went right back to being the same old Bernie that he was all along, which got him to win Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada, but he was only running a strategy that was going to get him 30% chunks in each state. So you need to expand the coalition, and I didn't see a strategy that was built on expanding the coalition. I saw Bernie being Bernie and, frankly, being incapable of adjusting to the new reality. So what do I mean? Because it's easy for somebody who loves Bernie, like I do, to come across this video and say, yeah, okay, what do you know, Kyle? You're an armchair pontificator. I will say, listen, yes, I am Monday morning quarterbacking, and, you know, I say this with nothing but love and respect and devotion to Bernie and his team, but in my opinion, here's the strategy that could have definitely helped them and potentially kept us in the ballgame. First and foremost, Bernie needed to be better at the tit-for-tat establishment game. So what I mean by that is, when you had Bloody Monday and all these centrists dropped out and endorsed, or I shouldn't even say centrists because I don't think they're centrists, neoliberals, they all dropped out and endorsed Biden. If I was on the Bernie campaign, I would have done everything I can to just blunt that media momentum that Biden was getting, where they're, oh my God, isn't this wonderful? Oh my God, isn't this great? Oh my God, Biden's now the strongest candidate. Oh my God, look at this. Oh my God, Bernie's day is done. You needed to do your best to try to get Elizabeth Warren to drop out and endorse you. Offer her anything. I don't care. I'd go as far as offering her VP, and we'll deal with the consequences of that later. Andrew Yang, try to get him to endorse you. Try to get Tom Steyer. Try to get Tulsi. Like, do anything you can. Also, try to get a couple normie Democratic endorsements, because post-Nevada, there's an argument you're the clear front runner. So he could have shifted rhetoric to be like, I'm the man in this bitch. So I'm, you know, here's my olive branch to anybody who wants to be part of our movement. And it would have helped assuage the fears of many of the normie voters who rejected Bernie if there was a little bit of a more tit-for-tat, playing the establishment game, countering endorsements with endorsements. Now, that's the smallest piece of what he could have done, but I do think that would have helped blunt the media momentum, which so helped Biden leading into Super Tuesday and Super Tuesday 2. The second thing is, okay, now is when you hammer Biden. Now is when you hammer him. I think the campaign was right to not do it early on and to keep their powder dry. Why do I say that? Because he was winning. He was winning, so by definition, his strategy was good. That's the whole point. If you can win, your strategy was successful. That's the way it works. So when he was winning Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, and he wasn't going after Biden aggressively, okay, great. Keep doing that because it's working. The only reason you changed to attack him is because now the dynamics have shifted in the race, and it's not a fractured field. You're not trying to get your 30%. Now you're mano a mano. You got to take the guy down. You have no choice now. You have no choice. And I didn't see him do anything that wasn't already part of his playbook previously when they were going relatively soft on him. Now you have to make the distinction, and I don't think the distinction's enough, because it wasn't, to just talk about the policy. You needed to say, no, you don't get it. This guy is corrupt. But I would go as far as to bring up specific examples. I'd give the dollar amount. I'd say Joe Biden took X amount of money from the pharmaceutical industry. Joe Biden took X amount of money from the for-profit health insurance companies. It's no wonder he's against Medicare for all. He's bought by the industry. Instead, what Bernie does is he's so nice that he acts like, oh, it's just a difference of opinion. But that's not just a difference of opinion. That's also, he's corrupt, and he has the position he has because he's paid to have the position he has. So that's an important point, is after the race shifted, you don't have an option. I know you like Joe. I know you're a nice guy. But it would be disrespectful to the working people who donate to you to not go after him aggressively, to not say, yes, in fact, he is corrupt. He is a swamp thing, and he led to Donald Trump. The next thing I would have done is, and they did a good job of this early on, but then they tapered off. Bernie needed to hammer electability. Now, early on, I remember I had a conversation.
Now, what he's saying there is Bernie needed to attack Biden. Bernie didn't attack Biden enough post Super Tuesday. In their last debate, he attacked him a little bit, but he needed to be running aggressive ads. He needed to be attacking him, but he kept saying, oh, my friend Joe Biden. Oh, my friend, that was ridiculous. And then when he was asked if he thought Joe Biden could win, he said yes. That was one of the biggest mistakes of his campaign. He needed to say, no, Joe Biden can't win. Joe Biden is corrupt. Elect me. Now, that was one of the... And also, him saying he'll support the Democratic nominee no matter what was another big mistake. Bernie needed to have the courage to walk away. He did not have that courage. But we'll get more to that later. We're going to take a look more at the video now, and we're going to look at his next point.
He wasn't making the argument in new ways. And what I would have advised the campaign to do is you have to connect the dots for people. You can't leave anything up to their imagination. And so for me, if I'm Bernie, I say Joe Biden is Hillary Clinton all over again. He's Hillary Clinton 2.0. We just ran this experiment in 2016, and the establishment safe option lost to Donald Trump. Don't make that same mistake again, because in reality, I'm the safe option. I'm the one who's more electable against Trump. Look at my numbers with young people. Look at my numbers with independents. There's no way you're going to win a general election with this guy who cannot get the young to turn out in favor of him. He is Hillary Clinton. I am FDR. FDR got elected 4 times. 4 times. You say, you want to say he's not Hillary Clinton? Fine, then he's John Kerry. John Kerry, exact same situation. Safe option in 2004, lost to George W. Bush. After 4 years of George W. Bush, I would have kept repeating over and over, Joe Biden is Hillary Clinton. Joe Biden is Hillary Clinton. Joe Biden is Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton just lost. Hillary Clinton just lost. Hillary Clinton just lost. This just happened in 2016. You have to say it over and over and over and over and over to the point where, in the same way that...
I definitely think that would have been an effective attack. He never was able to point that out. Maybe because of his friend Joe Biden, but I think that's incredibly selfish to all the people who donated to his campaign and believed in a better America, who actually donated their money from their paychecks to his campaign. Even leading up to the pandemic, there are still people donating. Now, if he were to call him Hillary Clinton, that would have got into people's heads, which I think he's about to talk about. So let's just hear him talk about that. Press play now. We can press play.
Trump hammered home crooked Hillary, and everybody was like, yeah, that's who she is, crooked Hillary. It's got to stick where people go, Joe Biden. Oh, right, like Hillary Clinton. It's got to stick like that. So I would have hammered electability, which they did early on. I think they didn't do as good of a job of it post Bloody Monday and Super Tuesday. I would have not only made the electability argument, but you have to get clever with it. You have to get crafty with it. And I would have hammered home, he's Hillary Clinton, I'm FDR. He's Hillary Clinton, I'm FDR. And then finally, and here's, I think, probably the most important point, and the thing that he did the least. I wanted Bernie, after Super Tuesday, to proudly embrace the label moderate and centrist. Now you're saying, well, hold on, Kyle, and I've seen this, people reply to me on Twitter saying this every now and then. They're like, hey man, but he's not that. Like, why would he say that? He's not that. Like, to say that he's not a leftist is crazy. And my response to them is, I don't actually respond to them, and I try to avoid Twitter mentions altogether. Like, I rarely see responses, but every now and then I do. Some of them came after me on this. If you look at the opinion polls, if you look at what the American people believe on the issues, Bernie Sanders represents their opinion the overwhelming majority of the time. Medicare for all, free college, a living wage, ending the wars, legalizing marijuana, raising taxes on Wall Street, all these beliefs, all these policies are super popular. So I wanted Bernie Sanders to make the case, well, hold on now. Not only am I the electable one, Joe's Hillary Clinton, I'm like FDR. Hillary Clinton just lost. You want to run that experiment again? But also, I'm the moderate one. I'm the centrist, because I'm right smack dab in the center of mainstream American opinion. Now, every now and then, Bernie would do this line that's part of his stump speech. I'm not the radical. These ideas aren't radical. He says that. That's how he phrases it. These ideas aren't radical. Okay, good line, but what's the problem with it? The problem with it is you're saying what you're not. You're not saying what you are. You have to say what you are. I'm a centrist. I'm a moderate. That's what I am. Joe Biden, he's an extremist. I would have called him an extremist. Why? The Iraq War is pretty extreme. Hundreds of thousands of innocent people dead, cost trillions of dollars. We ordered torture to cover
Okay,
it
we're
up.
going to pause this for a
Iraq War-
second. And I think there's something in the chat. Brad, can you take a look at the chat? Is there anything in the chat? I'm being alerted there's something. What is it? So what is happen? What are people saying in the chat? Let's take a look at that. Okay, and who was that from? Okay. Now, is there anything else in the chat? Okay. Next time. Now, let me know if there's anything else interesting in the chat. Now, we're going to go back to the video.
War's pretty extreme. Outsourcing deals. That's pretty extreme. He supported permanent normal trade relations with China, lost millions of jobs. He supported NAFTA. Pretty extreme. If you're a blue-collar worker in the middle of the country and you lost your job, that's pretty extreme if you ask me. Patriot Act. He supports unconstitutional spying on all Americans. That seems pretty extreme to me. That seems out there. That seems pretty extreme. So what Bernie needed to do was say, I'm the moderate, I'm the centrist, he's the extremist. Proudly embrace that label. Now, why? Because normally I say labels don't matter. Generally speaking, they don't matter because people don't know what they mean. But people perceive themselves, regardless of where they stand on the issues. Almost everybody perceives themselves as a moderate. You might not because you're, up to your eyeballs in politics, you're a political junkie. Not everybody is. People perceive themselves as a moderate. They think, like, what do you mean? My ideas are the common sense ideas. Okay, so play into that. And here's the trick that Bernie needed to do. He needed to thread a needle. Thread a needle. In this election, the turnout for older voters was through the roof. You actually had an increase in turnout for younger voters as well, but that increase was drowned out by the even bigger turnout among older voters. So Bernie needed to thread the needle and find a way to not lose any of the young support that he was getting in overwhelming numbers. People under 44 years old. It was like over 70% have been supporting Bernie. So you have to find an argument, find a way to not depress turnout among the youth, but also increase turnout among the old for you, or chip away at the giant number of older voters that are all going to Biden. And what I saw is post Super Tuesday, there was no adjusting in the strategy. There was like zero attempt to try to get the older demographic. It was just like a doubling down on an attempt to get the younger demographic, but at no point did the younger numbers eclipse the older numbers. So
now let's
you're
pause this
doubling
for a
down
second.
on the strategy.
And we're going to take a look at a poll quickly, which will reinforce his argument. I'm going to send it to you. This is a poll from Newsweek regarding Medicare for All, and we're going to take a look at this poll. It says 69% of Americans. Now, he was saying he should embrace the moderate centrist role because that's the center of the country. Now, if you where do you see where the numbers are in the poll? If you could find where the numbers are. Okay. The poll showed 69% of registered voters support Medicare for All. The poll also showed 46% of Republican voters supporting Medicare for All, alongside 88% of Democrats and 68% of independents. That's about 2/3 of the country. So if he were to embrace the moderate centrist role, it would make some sense. And now most of the country was against the Iraq war, so we could attack Joe Biden on that. He's definitely right. And I mean, it's definitely an important thing to mention. He should have pointed out these polls as well. He didn't use this data. He could have used this data. It's very important. And this to the argument that he's a moderate and a centrist. Now, in American politics, he's to the left. I definitely agree. But on a world scale, he's not to the left. He is center in some countries. It really depends on what's happening in the country that you're in. So we're going to take a look at the video again.
That gets you your solid 30% in each state, but when it's one-on-one, you need 51%. So how do you make sure you keep that 30%, or excuse me, you keep that young block coming out for you and not being depressed, not decreasing, but also you have to chip away at Biden's giant, as big as Bernie was leading with young people, Biden's leading just as much with old people. So how do you chip away at those voters? Answer, very simple. Again, most of those voters are saying, I'm voting solely on electability. I just want somebody who could beat Trump. So you had to win the argument that, no, I beat Trump, he doesn't. That's why you say, he's like Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton just lost. He's Hillary Clinton. He's Hillary Clinton. You want to run this experiment again? You're going to lose to Trump. You got to vote for me.
Now we're going to pause this for a second.
What did Bernie do?
And I'm going to reinforce the Hillary Clinton corruption argument with another video I'm going to send quickly. And this is a video from the Jimmy Dore Show, which talks about Hillary Clinton's actual corruption. Now, we're just going to mention that, for the sake of argument, Hillary Clinton is corrupt. But let's show an example. Why not?
Thinks that they can influence what I will do doesn't know me very well. And they can actually look and see what I have said and done throughout my career.
Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead. And she said that anybody who knows her knows that she's not easily influenced.
Mrs. Clinton stood up. She said, let's get our picture taken, which we did. And she said, Professor Warren, we've got to stop that awful bill, referring to this bankruptcy bill that's sponsored by the credit card companies. So I left. She went back to Washington, and I heard later from someone who was a White House staffer that there were skid marks in the hallways when Mrs. Clinton got back as people reversed direction on that bankruptcy bill.
They were supporting the industry, and because of her...
President Clinton had been showing that this was another way that he could be helpful to business. It wasn't a very high visibility bill. And when Mrs. Clinton came back with a little better understanding of how it all worked, they reversed course, and they reversed course fast. And indeed, the proof is in the pudding. The last bill that came before President Clinton was that bankruptcy bill that was passed by the House and the Senate in 2000, and he vetoed it. And in her autobiography, Mrs. Clinton took credit for that veto, and she rightly should. She turned around a whole administration on the subject of bankruptcy. She got it.
So there was Hillary Clinton when there was a bankruptcy bill that was favorable to the corporate moneyed interests that hurt the working man. She got educated about it by Elizabeth Warren. She then went back to Washington and got Bill Clinton to veto that bill. That happened. And then what happened? Let's see what happened. Does money influence Hillary Clinton?
Then?
One of the first bills that came up after she was Senator Clinton was the bankruptcy bill. This is a bill that's like a vampire. It will not die, right? There's a lot of money behind it. And
Bill her husband had vetoed.
Her husband had vetoed it very much at her urging.
And?
She voted in favor of it.
Why?
As Senator Clinton, the pressures are very different. It's a well-financed industry. A lot of people don't realize that the industry that gave the most money to Washington over the past few years was not the oil industry, was not pharmaceuticals. It was consumer credit products. Those are the people, the credit card companies have been giving money, and they have influence.
And Mrs. Clinton was one of them, as senator.
She has taken money from the groups, and more to the point, she worries about them as a constituency.
So what does this mean, though, to these people, these millions of people out there whom the politicians cavort in front of as favoring the middle class and then are beholden to the powerful interests that undermine the middle class? What does it say about politics today?
This is the scary part about democracy today. We're talking again about the impact of money. The credit industry on this bankruptcy bill has spent tens of millions of dollars lobbying, and as their profits grow, they just throw more into lobbying for how they can get laws that will make it easier and easier and easier to drain money out of the pockets of middle-class families.
Okay, so there you go. Hillary Clinton, she says she's not affected by money. She says there you go. She's affected by money. Completely, 100%. And there it is from Elizabeth Warren. It's not my words, it's Elizabeth Warren. And so people who say we have to grow up, we don't really know what's happening. They said the same thing to the Occupy Wall Street people. We know exactly what's happening, and that's why we want a revolution from Bernie Sanders.
Now, one of the reasons I brought that up is that bill is relevant today still, because that was one of the bills Joe Biden supported when he was called the senator from NBNA, which is a credit card industry in the state of Delaware, which he was a senator for, and he was sponsoring that bill. And that shows Hillary Clinton is corrupt, so that argument against Hillary Clinton, that Biden is like Hillary, would have definitely worked. Let's try to finish the video from Kyle Kalinske
now. In all the interviews after Super Tuesday, he was asked by reporters. Do you think Joe Biden can beat Donald Trump? You know what his response was? I wish I was kidding, guys. He said yes. I knew from the second I saw that clip, we were in deep trouble and we were probably going to lose. Because what that clip showed me, and he said it multiple times, what that clip showed me is, oh, you don't get it. You don't get what you have to say to win. You don't get the colossal shift in the momentum of this race, and that you're not in Kansas anymore, dog. This is a whole new ball game, and the new ball game requires new rules and a new strategy. Not you doing the same, Bernie Sanders thing that you did before you got slaughtered. You just got slaughtered on Super Tuesday. Adjust. So again, I just want to run through it for everybody really quickly. What went wrong was Bernie's strategy didn't adjust post Super Tuesday. The establishment coalescing in retrospect really was a mountain that was too tall for us to climb. Partially, yes, you blame Bernie for not adjusting his strategy, but yeah, you can blame the establishment for their dirty tricks and their scheming behind closed doors and their backroom deals and Obama making the phone call and the media for pushing the narrative nonstop. The media is way more powerful than even I thought because their narrative worked. So that's thing number one. The establishment coalescing was just too much of a hill for us to climb. Bernie's campaign needed to play the establishment game better of tit for tat with endorsements and almost embracing that front runner role. The next thing is, this is the third thing I believe, he needed to hammer Biden on corruption and take the gloves off. Say that, Biden is the rot that led to Trump being elected. You have to be aggressive post-Super Tuesday. Pre-Super Tuesday, they were right to not be aggressive. Post-Super Tuesday, that's when you take the gloves off. And the fourth and fifth things are the most important things. The fourth one was, again, hammer electability. Compare Biden to Hillary. Compare yourself to FDR. Hammer that home really strongly so people really start thinking, no, maybe Biden isn't the most electable. And then the fifth thing is proudly embrace the moderate and centrist label, because you needed to chip away at that older demographic, and the only way that they would vote for you is if you convince them that you're a safe option, that you're not extreme, that you're not like a pie-in-the-sky guy. And the way you do that is they agree with you on the policy, Bernie, so you could keep talking about the policies, but call it moderate and call it centrist. And then actually, I didn't mention this. It's not one of the most important parts, but what I would have done if I was in Bernie's campaign, you farm out to other people who are affiliated with the campaign to question Joe Biden's cognitive situation. You don't have anybody in the campaign do it, because then, oh my God, how dare you? There would be a whole outcry from the media. But people who are sympathetic to the campaign, who are around the campaign, who will deliver a message in a nuanced way. You don't have to say, oh, he's got severe cognitive decline, like I can say on this show, but you have people raise questions, like Cory Booker did. Remember Cory Booker in one of the debates afterwards? He's like, sometimes you look at Biden and you just wonder, is he all there?
Now,
I don't know,
before
man.
we
You
finish
guys
the
tell
video,
me.
I want to say something else. I'm going to say that definitely the cognitive decline is a big issue. Now, I was going to save this for when we talk about Biden, but we're going to take a look at this video now. I'm going to text it to you, Brett, and you're going to play this video. The cognitive decline of Joe Biden. We're going to take a look at this video.
Come on, man. Come on. Joe Biden, I'm running for, in this case, running for President of the United States. Look me over. If you like what you see, help out. If not, vote for the other person.
All right, Chuck. Thank you very much.
All right. It's Chris, but anyway.
I just spoke at Dartmouth on healthcare at the medical school, or not. I guess I wasn't actually on the campus, but the people from the medical school were at the. I want to be clear.
Why? You're getting nervous, man. Tomorrow's superstar. Minnesota!
Or where the hell I spoke.
I got hairy legs. Let's do push-ups together, man. Let's run. Let's do whatever you want to do. Let's take
the country wasn't built by Wall Street bankers, CEOs, and hedge fund men.
My name's Joe Biden. I'm a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate, and I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
Putin, in terms of Iraq. In terms of No, I'm called middle class, Joe. It's not meant as a compliment. Means I'm not sophisticated.
North Carolina.
And the court said, well, you don't have executive authority to do that on our own. And we did that in 1976. And 2000. Backing up here. 2014 when we did that. And they struck it down.
And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They'd look at this primary from a campaign that's about negative attacks into one about what we're for, because we cannot get reelected. We cannot win this reelection. We can only reelect Donald Trump.
Alabama! A proud Democrat. An Obama Democrat.
Truth to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing that turn blonde in the sun.
They're going to have a conversion of the road to Damascus, because now you say, by the way, are you going to stick with the president on the following president, the last guy on this issue, and just start naming them.
In fact, they said Joe Biden said that what he was
Number one, I was a Democratic caucus. You ever been to a caucus?
What?
No, you haven't. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you.
blind dog-faced pony soldier.
Oh, come on, man. The idea that, television, excuse me, make sure you have the record player on at night, the phone, make sure the kids hear. Let him go. And much of what he's proposing is very, very much pie in the sky.
So that cognitive decline argument might have come handy, like he was saying. Don't let the Bernie campaign directly say it, but let affiliates say it. Let AOC talk about it. Let Pramila Jayapal talk about it. Let the squad talk about it. Let these people say, don't you think, look at Biden, suddenly put it in conversations. Great. But don't let anyone in the campaign directly say it, because then Bernie will go down. But there's definitely something wrong with Biden's cognitive decline. And if he were to become president, we would have sort of a Bush-Cheney situation, because during the Bush administration, Cheney ran a lot of the things. So we would definitely have to rely heavily on the vice president. We would not have to rely heavily on Biden. I mean, look at him. You really can't rely heavily on him anyway. Now, let's finish the video really quickly, and we're going to move on.
So I would have had some people related to the campaign do it, because that, I don't think a lot of people actually even really know that he's in a terrible situation cognitively, and if you raise that as an issue, it becomes an issue. So that's the other thing I would have done. But listen, at the end of the day, I know this is a long segment, but I think it's super important. At the end of the day, I don't want anybody to be too sad, to be too upset, because we were right there. We were right there. Guys, and I mean this in all sincerity, if Bloody Monday didn't happen, we won! We won! Bernie would have gotten a plurality, and we would have won. Biden would have still been off in Nowheresville. Biden needed everything to come together in the perfect storm for him to win. He needed all the king's horses and all the king's men to put him together again. He needed Mayor Pete and Amy Klobuchar to drop out and endorse him, Obama to make the phone call, get Beto on board too to try to win Texas. He needed Elizabeth Warren to stay in to siphon some votes from Bernie. He needed everything to come together perfectly in order to win. So it required all these tricks and these backroom deals. In other words, if the race was run in a fair way with no coordination between all the candidates, imagine we had some sort of rule. Like, yeah, if you're run for president, you can't coordinate with other candidates, nothing like that. Okay, well, if that was the situation, Bernie won. He would have gotten a plurality and we would have won. So I don't want you to be too upset and too down on yourself, because we're right there. We're right there.
Time and time again here on Rising, we've talked about what issues are most important.
Okay, so definitely there were a lot of things that went wrong in Bernie's campaign. And like I said, offering Elizabeth Warren the VP might have kept him in the race. Getting these other endorsements might have kept him in the race. Getting all these, that was the key. Biden getting these endorsements annihilated Bernie and made it almost impossible for him to come back. His campaign strategies were not working post Super Tuesday. There were so many factors that led to his decline. Have to remember that. And the fact that the results from the Bernie Biden task force just came out, which we're going to look at the end of this video. And I'm not very impressed with the results. That was progressive, and no one really should be. Biden has not moved on any of the issues, really. So we're going to skip this video, the one that we have on this graphic now. And we're going to move on to Biden, but rather than talking about Biden's campaign, well, I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I definitely think Biden ran a very poor campaign. He won the primary without the young 100%. 70% of voters under the age of 45 voted for Bernie Sanders. They did not vote for Joe Biden. And Elizabeth Warren splitting the vote definitely helped Biden. Biden was not going to win in any other race without the factors. Like in the video calculates, you said the perfect storm was created where Biden was actually able to win the race. And 70% of the voters over age of 45 voted for Biden. There's a reason. He was able to appeal to the older demographic much easier than Bernie Sanders. And now Bernie is not in the race anymore, obviously. Biden has the nomination. He's made very few concessions to progressives. And we're going to take a look at this video from Kyle Kulinski's Secular Talk, which says, shock poll, a majority of Bernie voters likely voting third party. And there's a reason for that. Biden doesn't reach out enough. And we're going to take a look at that. And there's actually a percentage of them who are going to vote for Trump as well, about 15% margin. We're going to vote for Trump. And about 51% margin who are going to vote third party. Well, let's just take a look at the video. The first one.
I have some news here for Joe Biden, which is somewhat devastating, if I don't say so myself. So Carl Bajer tweeted this. New Emerson poll finds that a 51% majority of Sanders supporters are likely to consider voting third party or independent. So you could see there, this is the specific breakdown. It says, how likely are Sanders supporters to consider backing an independent or third-party candidate? This is from April 28th. You have very likely 21.9%, somewhat likely 29.1%, and then you have somewhat unlikely 11.5%, very unlikely 14%, no chance 23.6%. It's kind of amazing that only 23.6% say there's no chance of them backing a third-party or independent candidate. So this is noteworthy, particularly because these numbers are honestly the strongest I've ever seen. So I was under the impression it was like 12, 15% or something of Bernie supporters who are either going to not vote or vote third party. But no, we're talking about a 51% majority of Bernie supporters that are likely to consider voting third party or independent. Guys, Joe Biden has a little bit of a crisis on his hands right now. Now, I don't want you to get it twisted. He won the primary without the young. I mean, it's true. That's what happened. And it's possible that he puts together a coalition of the suburban professional class people, the anti-Trump suburban professional class people, that's enough to win the election. That's possible. But, and there's a very important but, this is not the coalition that won the last time for the Democrats. The Obama coalition in 2008 and 2012, one of the biggest parts of the coalition was young people.
Now let's pause this for a second, and we're going to
of the
take a look at a USA Today poll. So not only are there 57%, or is it 57 or 51? 57% who are not going to vote for for Biden. There is another poll here I'd like to take a look at. I texted it to you, Brett. And we're going to take a look at this. Beyond the 57% who are not going to back Biden, 15% are going to vote for Trump. So Biden has lost 60, 70, about 73% to Bernie Sanders supporters. Poll: 15% of Sanders supporters will back Trump. Will vote for Trump if Bernie is the nominee. If former Vice President Joe Biden secures the Democratic Party, 15% of supporters will likely vote for Donald Trump's re-election. If accurate, that was slightly higher than occurred in the bitter battle with Hillary Clinton. Now, if you factor in the 15% who are going to vote for Trump, like I said, and the 57% who are not going to vote for him at all, that's a big chunk of Bernie supporters. Over 70% of them are saying, nope, I'm going to stick with Trump, or nope, I'm going to vote for third party. Because they're saying, you don't represent us. And that's very important. Representation is very important. Now, I think he deserves to lose this 70% of support because he has not. You earn votes. You don't just get votes because, I'm running. A lot of the Democrats are anti-Trump, and the reason they're voting for him is just because they don't like Trump. I don't agree with that. If you're saying I disagree with his policies, great. Vote for someone, and you say I agree with Joe Biden's policies and I don't agree with Trump, great. Good for you. But if you're saying, I just don't like Trump, and I'm going to vote for the Democrat, whoever it is, I don't know what their policies are, I don't care, that's ridiculous, that's stupid. Now, if you have your reasoning, great. But now, he lost a lot of support. And there's a good reason for that. And Biden's campaign is like, oh, he's going to be the next FDR. He's not going to be the next FDR. That's ridiculous. Now, progressive voter myself, I looked into every single candidate's record before the primary even started. Now, it came out, there were 3 candidates I was willing to vote for. I was willing to vote for Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Andrew Yang. There was a chance I would vote for Tulsi Gabbard when she was completely progressive. I might have still voted for her if she got the nomination anyway because she's anti-war and she was going to pull us out of the wars, and that might have been enough. But, yeah. Definitely. But, no. I don't just back him because he's Biden. No, that's stupid. Now, the Bernie Biden task force we're going to take a look at in 1 second. Take a look at the Bernie Biden task force. Well, I'm going to send you the video in 1 second. Yeah, sure. No problem. Okay, so the Bernie Biden task force video I'll be sending to you. Here are the recommendations. Did you get it? Okay, I'll send it now. So the recommendations for the Bernie Biden task force just came out. Let's see how much Biden has bended on his policies. Let's take a look.
So we have an update on the Unity Commission that Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders have set up with some of their, respective people. Yeah, John Kerry, for example, was on Biden's Unity Task Force, and AOC was on Bernie's, and they came together to work on climate policy. They worked on 6 different issues, or overarching issues, categories, and they just released a list of their recommendations. It's over 110 pages. Now, last night, the news broke that they finished, but they didn't actually release the list itself. Like, the news agencies did not say, here's the over 100 pages of policy recommendations. They only had some brief things here and there that they dropped in the various articles explaining some of what's in there. Here are some of the few details that we actually have. They want 0 carbon emissions by 2035, which apparently moved up Biden's previous line for 0 carbon emissions by 15 years. They want some police reform executive orders. They didn't describe exactly what those ones are. And they want a moratorium on deportations for 100 days. Now, I will say, the 0 carbon emissions thing, I always find that so curious because it's like, yeah, we all agree the goal is 0 carbon emissions. But putting that arbitrary line on it, it's like, that's not the way this stuff works. It's like, we need to do massive investment in the technologies of the future right now, and then just hope to get there ASAP to 0 carbon emissions.
Pause here.
You can't set a line of 15 years and then, like, 14 years from now we've done nothing, and then it's like, but by next year we'll have no carbon emissions. That's not the way it works. So I always find the line thing weird. And listen, ultimately,
can you pause it?
I think that this Unity Task Force is useless because they come up with the platform and then they're just going to ignore the platform. They do it all the time. Like, oh, here's what I say I'm in favor of, and then they just don't do those things. So it's just a way to, like, appease people who actually care about policy, and then once he gets in office, he's just like, I'm going to do whatever I want. That's the way that these things work. Now, here's what's
Brad,
not
pause the video. Okay. So they're talking about is the climate change. He didn't move at all on that. He moved, I think he moved his plan back by 15 years earlier, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. He's right. You do everything you can now and you hope it works in the future. You don't just go, oh, I'm going to do it. No, that's stupid. But it's one of the most ridiculous things. He doesn't want to move on that. he's not going to put the reforms into place that he needs, but he's lying. I'm going to call it now that he's lying. And by 2030, we're not going to have near zero greenhouse gas emissions if he becomes the president, because I think he's lying. So let's continue.
The list of recommendations, apparently, according to these articles. No Green New Deal. No defunding the police. I'm not surprised on the defunding the police thing at all. No abolishing ICE. I'm not surprised on that one either. No Medicare for all. Biden was adamant that we have to expand the Affordable Care Act. You know, the reasonable thing is to expand the Affordable Care Act into Medicare for all, but no, he just wants to expand it and in a nondescript way and, you know, just make it slightly better, even though we still had 28 million people without health insurance. So it's not good enough, period. But anyway, the one that I actually hurt the most, in my opinion, because this is one that I actually was holding out hope that he might improve on. No legalizing marijuana. Apparently he was adamant on that front too. So listen, it is kind of a worst case scenario in many ways because Biden has such a big lead in the polls now. They know he has a big lead in the polls now. And they kind of know that they don't need the left. They know they have enough already. And if they continue to jack those senior voters from Trump, they think we're perfectly comfortable doing this. So basically some of the biggest issues for the left.
Now, let me start with legalizing marijuana. Legalizing marijuana and freeing the nonviolent drug offenders is something he should have immediately signed on to. That would have gotten most of the holdouts to vote for him. He's being stupid if he thinks he can do that. Another thing, I don't know how the election's going to turn out this time, but last time Hillary Clinton lost, and she lost about 10% of Bernie Sanders supporters. This time, as we just showed, they're losing over 70% of Bernie Sanders supporters, and Hillary Clinton lost by losing 10%. They're being incredibly stupid by not reaching out. They clearly have no idea what they're doing. Now, you say elections most likely will be decided by senior voters, but still, losing 70% of someone's base, you have to be pretty stupid to be able to do that. Now, we're done with that video graphic. Now, we're going to talk about one last thing. Who do I think Joe Biden should pick as his VP? Now, there were so many people on the list. Now the list has dwindled down to Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren. There's Tammy Duckworth, but she has zero chance because she's a representative, and they want someone who has national recognition. Now, we didn't cover all the candidates. We're going to do a follow-up podcast in the future where we cover the rest of them very quickly, probably later in the week or something, where we take like a 30, 40 minutes and cover the rest. But I think Joe Biden needs to pick Elizabeth Warren for his VP. That's the only logical choice. Kamala Harris is not a progressive. She's good on criminal justice reform, but that's about it. She's not a progressive. Now, Joe Biden could ignore this and not pick Elizabeth Warren, end up losing, and then say, why did I lose? Maybe because I didn't give the progressives anything they wanted. Now, some progressives are going to hold out even with Elizabeth Warren because they're annoyed with her. And some are going to say, all right, you know what, fine, he's reaching out. Now, let's take a look at video graphic where there's essentially a debate between two of the Young Turks hosts. It's the final video in the Biden playlist.
There has been a lot of different displays of desperation among the potential VP picks for Joe Biden. And one of the more recent examples has to do with Elizabeth Warren. Now, there was an interesting piece published in Politico that didn't really have any news in it. For anyone who's been following politics, following this Democratic primary, you would know that Elizabeth Warren had pivoted away from Medicare for all or a single-payer healthcare model pretty late last year. But Politico publishes this piece as if this is a new way of pivoting for Elizabeth Warren, and that's not necessarily the case. Now, during a talk with some of the students at the University of Chicago, here's what she had to say about Medicare for all, and what makes more sense moving forward?
Medicare for all, do you think there'll be more of a receptivity to some sort of single payer healthcare system or some sort of hybrid but universal system?
You know, I think there'll be a lot of receptivity. Look, I argued for Medicare for all. I think ultimately getting us to a single payer, I think it's what makes sense. But the question is, how are we going to get there in a way that brings people in and people feel comfortable with it? I think right now people want to see improvements in our healthcare system. And that means strengthening the Affordable Care Act. We should be doing that anyway. That should be easy. We should be doing it right now.
So she had wavered on Medicare for all, again, like in November of last year, when she said that she would, if she gets elected, she would pass Medicare for all in 2 phases, with a public option in phase 1. And then toward the end of her first term, that's when she would start fighting toward a single payer healthcare system. At that point, for me at least, it became abundantly clear that she had no intention to fight for Medicare for all. But now this is being framed as, oh, Elizabeth Warren is pivoting away from Medicare for all because she wants to appeal to Biden so she can be chosen as his VP pick. So, Cenk, what do you make of this?
Go get him. Love it. I agree with her. As you can tell, Anna does not. Nope. So let me explain. Do I want to do Medicare for all more than anything? Absolutely, positively. Do I think that Elizabeth Warren wants to do Medicare for all? Yes, I do. We can disagree about that. That's okay. Do I think it's important for Elizabeth Warren to be picked as a vice president? Absolutely. She is by far the most progressive candidate out there possible. Joe Biden is going to be 78 years old when he's sworn in. I don't want to jinx it if he's sworn in. And there's been a lot of talk about him only serving 1 term. Nothing is more important than who his VP is. And I will take the second most progressive senator. And if you say no, I caught feelings. I still have those feelings. And that's going to decide that make me choose someone less progressive than her. That's, to me, I can't countenance that. I'm practical. And then on Medicare for all, is this a way of getting onto the VP ticket? If it is, then I think it's smart politics. And I don't think it actually changes her real opinion on it.
So, look, I don't know what's in her mind or her heart. So while I'm suspicious of her statements regarding wanting Medicare for all, I don't know, and I'll admit that. But what I will say is that the biggest problem with Elizabeth Warren from the beginning, okay, and I mean even as far back as when she did the whole Native American DNA test, is that she has terrible political instincts. And this play makes it abundantly clear, or actually just reinforces that. What I think we need to have a discussion about is the decision that the Biden campaign has made moving forward. And their decision has not been to appeal to progressive voters. Their decision has been to appeal not only to corporate donors, that's been a given, okay, that's been clear, but to appeal to never Trump Republicans who obviously prefer Biden over any other Democrat who ran during the primaries. And they're going to help Biden as much as they can because they hate Trump and they want to get Trump out, and they're willing to work with Biden. So I'm talking about the Bill Kristols of the world. I'm talking about Kellyanne Conway's husband, George Conway. I'm talking about David Frum, the very people who were actually pretty active during the Bush administration, very supportive of the Bush administration, but just cannot stand Donald Trump. And so if you look at how the Biden campaign is operating, they have gone to great lengths to, really appeal to those people to the right of, centrist Democrats. And what have they done for progressive voters? The only thing that I've seen from the Biden camp and Biden supporters is nonstop vilification and antagonistic language toward Bernie supporters. And so I bring that up because when you consider the values of establishment or centrist Democrats, corporate Democrats, you need to have your principles, because if you are a progressive who's willing to waver or be malleable and you think, oh, maybe my theory of change will work. Maybe if I'm a little malleable, I'll get in there and then I can change things from the inside. It's not going to happen. She's not going to be chosen as the VP pick. Right now, Joe Biden is actually vetting Amy Klobuchar. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. And it's because Amy Klobuchar is more appealing to the never Trumpers. She's more appealing to the people in the middle of the country who might lean conservative, but they
Now
can't
let's
stand Donald
pause
Trump.
the
This is
video
a political
graphic.
calculation that the Biden camp has made. And the fact that
Brad?
Elizabeth Warren hasn't realized that and is willing to waver on her principles and her beliefs, I
pause the
think
video.
is incredibly sad.
No.
That's where I'm coming from.
So I think half of what you're saying is true, but I think the other half is really
No,
important.
wait.
Did Biden go towards the mainstream and establishment during the primary? Yes. By the way, did it work? Yes. He won because of that. And so that
You can pause the video.
sucks for us, and it's
Okay, so what they're saying is they disagree about how progressive Warren is, yada, yada, yada. So I think she needs to be picked as the VP. Now, I have two views on this. One is if Trump wins, it kind of teaches the Democrats a lesson that they can't just put whatever candidate in front of the progressive base and say, oh, you're going to vote for whoever we tell you to, right? And my other theory is great. Biden wins, Warren's the VP. Maybe she'll be the next president and she can make her changes then. Let me talk a little bit about the changes Joe Biden is proposing. Joe Biden wants to lower the Medicare age to 60. Even Hillary Clinton said, all right, let's lower it to 50. Joe Biden likes to negotiate with Republicans. When he's finished negotiating, it's going to be 64. He's a terrible negotiator. Joe Biden is saying he'll cancel student debt in some circumstances, in some colleges. If he used he's not, his plan is terrible. If he used Warren's plan, which cost about $1.25 trillion, and eliminate all student debt and tuition of public colleges, he could do that. But then he would have to do a wealth tax, and his donors wouldn't like that. Donors would hate that. So he can't do a wealth tax, and he cannot do this plan, which would, by the way, raise about $2.75 trillion over 10 years. Great. And Biden is only going to make public colleges and universities free. I believe it's only community colleges. I'm not sure if he's wavered on that a little bit, but what he's saying is for people under a certain income. I honestly don't care if a millionaire wants to send their kid to a public college. They're paying the taxes. Let them send their kid. Next, let's talk about who he's considering for Treasury Secretary, Jamie Dimon. Jamie Dimon is a banker for J.P. Morgan and Chase. J.P. Morgan, and he's going to be a terrible choice for Treasury Secretary. Elizabeth Warren's another choice. Great, pick her. Or pick her for VP. Pick her for something, please. Next, Joe Biden is talking about having a bipartisan cabinet with corporate Republicans and corporate Democrats. That sounds very nice. And here's a Republican that I actually wouldn't mind him picking. Republican Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri. He's an economic populist. He wants us to negotiate drug prices instead of letting the pharmaceutical industry control everything. Great, pick him. Maybe he could adopt Andrew Yang's democracy dollars idea. No, he's not going to do that because then the donors wouldn't be able to fund the elections. Democracy dollars essentially would be everyone gets a certain amount of money and they can donate to campaigns they like. Maybe he could do the 21st Century Glass-Steagall Act from Warren, McCain, Cantwell, and King. No, he's not going to do that because that does bank regulation. Maybe he could restore the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to its former state. It's been a little bit weakened during the Trump administration. He's not going to do that. That hurts his banker friends. Now, a lot of people progressives might say that Warren is a bad choice. Let me read out this poll. According to a Morning Consult poll from 525 to 526, out of 9 winning woman candidates, Elizabeth Warren would have the biggest net positive impact on Biden's presidency against Trump. According to the survey, 26% of voters say that having Warren on the ticket would make them more likely to back Biden, and the others are 23%. And Warren's positive impact on Biden increased among voters ages 45 and younger, as well as Black and Hispanic voters. Now, let's talk about a poll done by the Young Turks, progressive media, independent media outlet. 72.2% of Young Turks viewers who took the poll approve of Elizabeth Warren for vice president, while 12.85% approve of Kamala Harris. 8.1% approve of Gretchen Whitmer, and 12.49% approve of Stacey Abrams. And let's talk about some of Warren's strengths as VP pick. A lot of her beliefs are in line with Bernie Sanders. She identifies as progressive. People know her. She got the Obama administration to do the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Great. When many Democrats, Republicans, and Obama himself didn't want it. His Treasury Secretary, I believe, was a banker, and he didn't want it, obviously. And she wasn't even a senator then. She was a professor. She knows Biden. They have a history mostly of her fighting him when she was a professor and he was in the Senate during hearings, but they got and she worked with Ted Kaufman, who was an ally in Biden's staff that she had, who was appointed in 2009 to Biden's Senate seat when Biden left. The governor gets to appoint someone when the senator leaves, and he was a bit of a progressive, so they have a relationship. And some of the weaknesses would probably include her fight with Bernie Sanders when she refused to shake his hand, the argument at the debate, she didn't endorse him, that shot her credibility with progressives, yada, great. Coming in third in her home state. But she appeals to many different demographics. Let's take a look at another poll. Another poll taken by USA Today would indicate that 71% of registered Democrats and Democratic leaners will support Elizabeth Warren for vice president. According to the poll, 41% of independents also support her for VP. Now, personnel is policy. So Biden picking Kamala Harris. Biden picking Gretchen Whitmer. That shows he's not reaching out. That shows because they're going to help him create the policies. And by the way, the vice president's going to run the administration because of his cognitive decline. So if he picks Warren, he's going to let a progressive run the administration. Great, let him do that. And I've made up my mind for this election. There's no way I'm voting for Joe Biden. No way I'm voting for Trump either. I'm going to vote for a guy we had interviewed on the show, Howie Hawkins. He represents enough of I agree with him 70% of the time. Great, I'll vote for him. Now people are going to say, if I'm not voting for Biden, I'm voting for Trump. Then why is it that? So if you're voting for Biden, So people will say a vote for Howie Hawkins or a third party candidate is a vote for Trump. Then wouldn't a vote for Biden be a vote for Trump? Wouldn't a vote for if you're not voting for Biden, you're voting for Trump. So if you're not voting for Trump or you're voting for Biden, it doesn't make any sense. So definitely, we're supposed to have a guest on today. They never showed. I'll have to figure out what's wrong with that, and maybe we'll have them on for another episode. But is there anything in the chat that's new? Okay. So I think we made enough points today. Thank you for joining us today on Kerberos Roundtable Discussions. Now, don't forget to like and subscribe